Chapter 2847, 2847 Superpower. 2847 Superpower. After several 100 million years, Ling Han had only obtained 3 heavenly venerable seals. It could not be helped. There were too many heavenly venerates here. The Lin clan, Chu clan, Zhou clan, and Rong clan all had a number of heavenly venerates, and Ling City also had a great many. Added with the very low rate of production of heavenly venerable seals, 3 seals was already extremely impressive. And precisely because of this, the raw stones that the Lin Alliance had dug out were all used by themselves. There were none that were sold. Now, they could only actively explore new ore veins. Ling Han went into seclusion. There were several hundred raw stones laid around him. These were the last few remaining. Some had even been bought from other forces. There were also some stone scraps beside him. Those were the scraps of raw stones that had been cut open, which he was using as reference. Yet this thing really had no rhyme or pattern. Some raw stones looked to be of excellent quality, with clear veined patterns. Logically speaking, they would definitely produce some valuable treasure, but after cutting them open, one would be greatly shocked. They were completely empty. There were also some raw stones that looked rough and battered, yet actually hid supremely valuable medicines, or even heavenly venerable seals. It could only be said that raw stones that looked better would have slightly higher chances of producing treasures, while raw stones that looked poor would have pitifully low chances. This could not be considered a pattern at all, because as the number of raw stones decreased, it was already impossible to use divine metal to buy those stones that looked excellent and could possibly produce heavenly venerable seals. Instead, one would have to buy them with the blood of heavenly venerable tier or even supremely valuable medicines. It was because someone had extracted a 4th-grade heavenly venerable seal from it, which caused what could be considered a terrible conflict, leading to the deaths of over 100 heavenly venerates. From this, everyone knew that even 4th-grade heavenly venerable seals could emerge from raw stone. If 4th grade could be produced, then what about 3rd grade, or even 2nd and 1st grade seals? It should be known that Ling Han was already considered a freakish prodigy, but among the heavenly venerable seals he possessed, even the highest level seal was only of the 5th grade, increasing his battle prowess by 47 times. It was also rumored that someone had extracted a small beast from a raw stone before. It had already grown into a ferocious beast of heavenly venerable tier in merely tens of thousands of years, and was overwhelmingly strong. Additionally, there had once been a supremely valuable medicine extracted, allowing a 4th-tier great elite that had stagnated for a considerable amount of time to break through and advance to the 5th tier. Going from the 4th tier to 5th tier was an absolute leap. Just look at Lin Yulian and Xian Chihu. They had not advanced from the 4th tier to 5th tier even after a whole epoch, which showed just how hard it was to break through on this level. This news caused the price of better-looking raw stones to spike greatly. Some stones were so expensive that even 6th-tier heavenly venerates would frown. Just buying one would mean having to empty out all of their coffers. The problem was that no matter how good the raw stone looked, it could still be completely empty once cut open. Then, one would really be coughing up blood at that. Raw stones would only become rarer and rarer, so Ling Han very much wanted to master the ability to see through raw stone so he could obtain the greatest amount of profit at the lowest price possible. He continuously studied, his hands holding scraps of stone or raw stones, comparing them. Was there actually a unique ability for him to cheat and penetrate the layers of stone that even heavenly venerable tier divine sense could not pass through, and see everything that lay within? After several 100 years, Ling Han shook his head. This was really a beautiful dream. Since he could think of this, how could it be that others would not be able to think of the same thing? His strength was comparable to the 4th tier, but there were still 5th tier and 6th tier elites who were stronger than him. Why was it that he would succeed where others failed? Was he stronger than them? Hold on, there really was one aspect that he was superior in. A thought came suddenly to Ling Han. His greatest pillar of support was the countless dimensions inside his body, which allowed him to become a small-scale Genesis world himself. Since he was the master of a whole Genesis world, he should be able to master everything. seeing through a stone should be a piece of cake, right? A thought occurred to him, and he felt that it was possible that he had found the right direction. He attempted to stimulate the power of dimension inside his body, communicating with the raw stone. Pa! The raw stone inside his grasp immediately crumbled. This thing was something that even a celestial king could easily shatter, so how could it possibly withstand the power of heavenly venerable tear? Ling Han couldn't help but grin. If it directly exploded, would there be any need to explore this further? He took another raw stone, and carefully controlled his power. Wang, wang, wang. Each cell in his body lit up one after another. That was the powers of dimension, and they were twinkling like a sky full of stars. When he had stimulated all the powers of dimension inside his body, his consciousness actually entered into a different space. He was stunned for a moment before ecstasy showed in his expression. This was the inside of the raw stone. He had succeeded, it actually was really possible. However, Ling Han immediately shook his head. Within this space, it was like his divine sense had sunk into a swamp, and every movement was difficult. He actually spent about 30 minutes to finally roam through the entirety of the raw stone. It was imperfect, but imperfection did not deny its excellence. It was still an extremely amazing breakthrough. Ling Han was sure that should he reveal this ability, the whole market would crash. The reason why stone gambling had been established was because no one knew what exactly lay within the raw stones, and those so-called stone gambling grandmasters would only have slightly higher chances of making accurate deductions even now. Essentially, they were still just guessing. But it was different for Ling Han. He only needed around 30 minutes, and he would be able to see whether or not a raw stone actually contained anything. Perhaps an elite would kidnap him, and use him as a tool for stone gambling. It was also possible that he would be killed off. An anomaly like him would have broken the rules, and could not be allowed to exist. Ling Han decided that he could not tell anyone about this secret. He made a great many attempts afterwards, touching all of the raw stones here. Then, he took one of them. He had seen a piece of divine metal here. His speed was slowly increasing, and he was sure that when he was more proficient, he would be done with just a simple touch of the raw stone. Next, he cut open all the raw stones one after another. As expected, aside from the one that he had taken out, all the other raw stones were completely empty, and he extracted a piece of divine metal from that last raw stone. He couldn't help but break into loud laughter, filled with excitement. A piece of divine metal naturally was not much, but it proved that this ability of Ling Han was not an illusion, but really genuine. It could bring him indescribable rewards. Let's go, and rake in great profits. Ling Han went out, and was about to set out after calling over the Empress and Hunyo. However, when they saw how excited he was, Ling Han's daughter and Fu Tianqing also shamelessly followed him. Hence, Ling Han could only helplessly take the two of them with him as well. It was naturally no problem to bring his daughter. As for a brat like Fu Tianqing, though Ling Han had great approval of this guy's natural talent, just the thought that it was possible that he would be able to hook away his precious daughter made him feel an urge to kick him. They set out, heading to Culmination City. Originally, Culmination City did not exist, but since the emergence of the industry of stone gambling, Culmination City had turned from what was originally a small marketplace into this huge city, where a great many forces stationed themselves. There was no other industry here, only the sale of stones. Ling Han and his group entered the city, and wherever their eyes could see, there were lanes selling raw stones. The various forces all had their own raw stone lanes for clients to choose raw stones, but they could only choose. If anyone wanted to cut the raw stone open, they would have to buy it. There was no excuse of so-called picking up the wrong stone by mistake. The great forces managed Culmination City together, laying down a considerable number of rules for the public to adhere to. If anyone broke these rules, that would be equivalent to making enemies out of over 106th tier elites. No one would be brave enough to do that. Hence, no matter how profligate anyone was, they would behave themselves. There was no one who would dare or could be exempted from the rules. In such an environment, it was not just 6th-tier forces that had raw stone lanes. 5th-tier and 4th-tier forces, too, had their own lanes. In fact, there were even some individual heavenly venerates that would occasionally find raw stones outside mines and come here to sell them off. To think that a dignified heavenly venerate would actually turn into a peddler, just the thought of it was quite amusing, but this was indeed what the culmination city was like at present. Ling Han, where will we go first? Hu Niu asked. Chapter 2848, 2848 Raw Stone Lane. 2848 Raw Stone Lane. Anywhere is fine, Ling Han said. They searched for a while, and went into the largest raw stone lane nearby. The most valuable thing here was veins of ore, and the least valuable was naturally land. Without veins of ore, it was completely worthless. Hence, every raw stone lane inside Culmination City occupied an excessively large area of land. Once they stepped in, they saw various stones of different shapes and sizes all laid out. There were a great many people that were picking through the raw stones. There were heavenly venerates, and there were also celestial kings. After making their choice, some would pay and leave with the raw stone, while some would cut open the stone on the spot right after their purchase. Undoubtedly, cutting open stones was an extremely exciting process. Everyone would be incredibly curious to see if there was any treasure that was hidden inside. If a treasure was revealed, someone would immediately be bidding on the spot, especially when the treasure was a supremely valuable medicine or heavenly venerable seal. That would definitely cause fierce competition, pushing the price to a frightful height. Of course, the grade of the great herb and seal would determine the final price. The group roamed as they liked, while Ling Han touched this and that stone. He would examine every raw stone he picked up for around 30 minutes, slow to the point of being annoying. All the raw stone lanes allowed their customers to study and touch the raw stones, as long as they did not damage the raw stones. Otherwise, the customer would have to pay compensation. At present, this belonged to the outer circle of the raw stone lane. The raw stones here did not look all that high in quality. Hence, the price would also be considerably cheaper. Every stone had the same price, but it was still as high as a piece of divine metal. This was already the cheapest. If they had entered the mid-grade or high-grade area, the raw stones there would be even more expensive, and every single raw stone would be priced individually, especially in the high-grade area. The raw stones there could not be purchased with mere divine metal, and could only be traded for supremely valuable medicines or even heavenly venerable seals. Because of Ling Han, who was burdening them, their speed was naturally extraordinarily slow. The Empress naturally could not be bothered with this, and directly sat down at the sidelines, while Hu Niu had long since raced ahead of them. Only Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing were still following Ling Han. In Ling Shi's case, she was patient by nature, and in Fu Tianqing's case, rather than saying that he was accompanying Ling Han, it would be more accurate to say that he was accompanying Ling Shi. Thankfully, Ling Han was focused on exploring those raw stones for the moment. Otherwise, he would definitely be overwhelmed by great jealousy. Scrap, scrap, scrap. This was still scrap. Ling Han was not disappointed. This was the low-grade area. In the first place, the chances of treasure being produced would be low. If he could profit with just these few stones, his luck was really too good to be believed. Hee, what is this guy doing? Does he think that he is a Grandmaster of raw stone? It can't be helped. The industry of stone gambling is flourishing now, and Grandmasters of raw stone are too popular. There will always be people who want to stick this label onto themselves. That's right. At present, any Grandmaster or alchemy or weaponsmithing is not as popular as a Grandmaster of raw stone. It is inevitable that there would be crooks mixed in with the real Grandmasters, too many of them imposters. Behind Ling Han, there were a few young people that were conversing spiritedly, but their voices were very loud, loud enough for Ling Han to hear them clearly. Ling Han did not have the time to be distracted, he did not care about them at all. However, Fu Tianqing turned around, and glared angrily at these young people. Ling Han was his master, his future father-in-law. These people were slandering Ling Han, so he naturally could not possibly just pretend he had not seen or heard it. What are you glaring at? That was a group of 5 young people, and they all had ribbons of iridescent light surrounding them. Clearly, they were all celestial kings. They were really very arrogant. It was clear that they had seen 9 ribbons of iridescent light wrapped around Fu Tianqing, yet did not show the slightest bit of respect at all. Within this primitive dimension, celestial kings were really very common. First heaven celestial kings were common, and so were 9th heavens. Added with the strict rules of Culmination City, celestial kings naturally needed not fear other celestial kings. No need to descend to their level, Ling Shi said calmly. She had a quiet nature, and did not like conflict. Fu Tianqing nodded, and proceeded to ignore these people. Hey, there is a great beauty. That's true, she is remarkably beautiful. Pretty girl, why don't we have a chat? Unexpectedly, when the 5 of them saw how exquisitely beautiful Ling Shi was, they actually dared to tease her. Fu Tianqing was outraged, and was just about to make his move. Don't be rash. Ling Shi pulled him back. Culmination City strictly forbade fights. These raw stones were too weak and fragile, so if a fight really broke out, without even involving heavenly venerable tier, merely a battle between celestial kings would be enough to cause an excessive amount of destruction. Hence, fights were absolutely not allowed to happen in Culmination City. If a fight really broke out, then no matter how many raw stones were destroyed, one would have to pay compensation for them. Fu Tianqing glared harshly at the 5 people, and made his decision. Once these 5 people left Culmination City, he would definitely teach them a good lesson so that they would never be so proud as to forget themselves. What is it? You still dare to glare at us? These 5 people were truly arrogant. Seeing Fu Tianqing's displeasure, not only did they not behave themselves in the slightest, they instead acted even more arrogant. Do you know who we are? Hee, nothing but trash, Fu Tianqing said calmly. He was Ling Han's disciple, so how could his tongue not be sharp? Moreover, with the large black dog teaching him from the sidelines, it would be stranger if he was not devious. Yet this was what Ling Han had personally instructed, to have Fu Tianqing study under the large black dog. Though he very much did not want to hand over his daughter to another, there was no way he could convince his daughter otherwise. Thus, he decided to educate Fu Tianqing as much as possible, making him learn various ways of being black-hearted and shameless from the large black dog so that he would become slicker, which was more suited for survival. Those 5 people were all infuriated. He actually dared to call them trash. Humph, just you wait. As long as you dare to come out from Culmination City, let's see if we won't beat you to death, they threatened. Fu Tianqing sneered. The person with the highest cultivation level among them was only a 4th heaven. They really did not know what was good for themselves. Clearly, they had some other basis for their arrogance. They had to have a powerful heavenly venerable tier backing them. Otherwise, there was no way for a celestial king to come here on their own power at all. Sure. I will wait for you, trash. Fu Tianqing made a sweeping gesture, meaning that he was going to sweep these trash into the garbage heap. The 5 people all instantly bared their teeth. Why did this guy have such a venomous tongue? One of them wanted to retort, yet one of the others with sharper eyes elbowed him, looking towards the entrance. Young Master Lang is here. Instantly, the other 4 people looked towards the entrance, and saw that there were 2 people presently walking over, an elder and a young man. The elder had grey brows and a grey beard, quite sage-like in demeanor. He crossed his arms behind himself, an expression of pride on his face. The young man was dressed completely in black, similarly looking very proud as well. Young Master Lang. Those 5 young people all approached. The young man in black robes nodded. Come and pay your respects to Grandmaster Nyo. The 5 of them exchanged looks, slightly confused, but they then immediately bowed respectfully towards the gray-haired elder. Greetings, Grandmaster Nyo. The gray-haired elder nodded. Rise. His demeanor was proud, putting on airs with his attitude. Grandmaster Nyo? Could it be that he is that slightly acclaimed stone gambling grandmaster, Yue Chengwang? The 5 of them whispered among themselves. What do you mean by slightly acclaimed? Grandmaster Yue is a well-known stone gambling grandmaster. That young Master Lang hurriedly corrected them. Yes, yes, yes. Those 5 lackeys all nodded, bowing repeatedly, completely different from how arrogantly they had previously acted. Young Master Lang has invited Grandmaster Yue. Could it be that he will be helping us cut open stones? One of the lackeys asked. Of course, another answered. Our young Master Lang truly has a reputation. He even managed to invite Grandmaster Yue. With the help of Grandmaster Yue, our gains today will definitely be amazing. They were all spouting words of flattery, and both young Master Lang and Grandmaster Yue smiled at this. Please help, Grandmaster Yue. Young Master Lang clasped his hands respectfully towards Yue Chengwang. Yue Chengwang nodded proudly. He roamed around, assessing each and every raw stone closely. After a while, he set his eyes on a raw stone, and immediately walked over. Without caring that there was another hand that was laid on it, he stretched out his hand to take it. Chapter 2849, 2849 Stone Gambling. 2849 Stone Gambling. Feeling a person come too close to him, Ling Han instinctively moved, and struck out with his palm. Yue Chengwang immediately grunted, and took a few steps back. His face turned from red to white, and then he suddenly spluttered out a mouthful of blood, feeling such pain that he could not speak. He was only a 9th heaven celestial king. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had realized something had been off, and withdrawn some part of his power in the nick of time, this palm strike would have been enough to kill him several hundred times over. Ling Han frowned. A puny 9th heaven actually dared to disturb him? Grandmaster Yue, are you all right? That young Master Lang hurriedly raced over. His name was Lang Xiran, and he was a first-tier heavenly venerate. Yue Chengwang felt a stuffy feeling in his chest, and couldn't even speak. Even his eyes looked to be in danger of popping out. How dare you? You actually dared to wound Grandmaster Yue. Lang Xiran looked towards Ling Han, his expression arrogant. At present, what was the most popular profession? It was not alchemists or weaponsmiths, and not formation masters either, but rather grandmasters of raw stone. But it was not anyone that could become a grandmaster of raw stone. One would have to have an extremely strong spirit and be well versed in analysis to be able to distinguish whether treasure could be produced from a raw stone. Of course, even the most amazing grandmaster of stone gambling could not possibly pick accurately every single time. Ling Han also looked towards Lang Xiran. What Grandmaster Yue? Scram. With the height that he was at now, there was already no need for him to make any explanations. Moreover, it was indeed he who had chosen that raw stone first. According to the rules, once someone had chosen a stone, others were not allowed to contend for it, and had to wait until the first person gave it up. How dare you? Lang Xiran said menacingly. You dare attack a grandmaster of raw stone, and speak so disrespectfully. Ling Han waved a hand at him dismissively, showing that he couldn't be bothered to give them any regard, and telling them to scram quickly. Yue Chengwang finally got his breath back, and said, Don't think that you are above everything else just because you are a heavenly venerate. It should be known that there will always be someone stronger than you. I don't believe that I can't deal with you. Grandmasters of raw stone were incredibly popular now, and were respected guests of various great forces. Everyone wanted to sell off the useless raw stones in their possession and keep the most valuable raw stones for themselves. In this manner, grandmasters of raw stone had become exceptionally important. To make a rough comparison, a grandmaster of raw stone was equivalent to an alchemist in the ancient realm, possessing outstanding status. Ling Han shook his head. No matter how popular a grandmaster of raw stone was, they were just using their status to bully others. Wasn't it the support of a heavenly venerate that they relied on? Previously, though his attention had been focused, concentrating on finding valuable raw stones, It did not mean that he had been completely unaware of things happening around him. He had only been ignoring them for the moment. He looked towards those 5 subordinates of Leng Xiuran, and glanced again at Niu Buchuan, his eyes becoming increasingly menacing. He possessed powerful battle prowess of the 4th tier. Merely with a glance, those 5 lackeys of Leng Xiuran immediately exploded into a shower of blood. Culmination City had its rules, forbidding battle. That was because battle could very possibly shatter raw stones. However, Ling Han had turned these 5 people into a shower of blood with just a single thought. This indeed did not comply with the rules of Culmination City, but Ling Han had 4th tier battle prowess, so it couldn't be helped. Who would really call him to a serious accounting because of this kind of trifling matter? It was just a few celestial kings that had died, so what did it matter? They dared speak so cheekily to his daughter. Even if they died, no one would pity them. Didn't they know he was a protective maniac? You. Leng Xiuran was outraged. The other party actually dared kill in front of him? Ling Han ignored Leng Xiuran. Was there a need for any reason for a heavenly venerate to kill a few celestial kings? Of course, he was not one to kill easily, but would only move if they deserved to die. Instead, he looked towards Niu Buchuan. You refuse to yield? I refuse. What is it? Do you dare to kill me as well? Niu Buchuan was not afraid. As a Grandmaster of Raw Stone, he had prominent status, and was the respected guest of various forces. Even a heavenly venerate would not dare to touch him. Ling Han smiles faintly. All right then, let's compete. Niu Buchuan sneered. Could it be that this brute wanted to battle him? What a joke, that would be too demeaning to his status. We will compete in stone gambling, Ling Han continued. What? Niu Buchuan was shocked. Ling Han wanted to compete with him in stone gambling? Had he taken the wrong medicine? You do not dare? Ling Han asked smilingly. Niu Buchuan sneered. Why would I not dare? I am worried that you will refuse to admit defeat. Ling Han shook his head. At times like these, even a 9th heaven celestial king would dare to act so insolent in front of a heavenly venerate? However, a so-called Grandmaster of Raw Stones could only be arrogant for a while because there ultimately would come a day when the heavenly venerable stones in this dimension were mined completely. By then, Grandmasters of Raw Stone would be no different from trash. Sure, then let's gamble. We will each choose 10 raw stones, and see who obtains the highest value, Ling Han said. Huh, sure, Niu Buchuan sneered. In a fight, he was definitely no match for Ling Han, but in terms of stone gambling, then even 100 Ling Hans added together were no competition for him. What are the stakes? The Grandmaster asked. Ling Han grinned. If you lose, then you, and this brat, have to kowtow to me 10 times. Leng Xiuran immediately wanted to object, but Niu Buchuan raised a hand to stop him. Turning his head, he asked, Young Master Leng, could it be that you do not trust me? This caused Leng Xiuran to hesitate for a moment. He thought seriously, that's right, what is there to doubt? Agreed. Leng Xiuran declared. But if you lose, you, too, have to kowtow 10 times to each of us. He was slightly expectant and excited. That was because Ling Han's cultivation level was clearly superior to his, so how pleasurable would it be to have a high-level heavenly venerate actually kowtow to him? Niu Buchuan also sneered. This man actually dared to treat him disrespectfully. Humph, did he really think that he was all that impressive just because he was a heavenly venerate? Niu Buchuan was a Grandmaster of Raw Stone. We have to have a time limit, Niu Buchuan said. One day. Sure. Ling Han nodded casually. He was getting more and more proficient at scanning stones. At the beginning, he had needed 30 minutes to complete a full scan, and now he only needed around 15 minutes or so. He was certain that this time would continue to shorten. Then let's begin, Niu Buchuan said. The two of them then began walking around in this area. Everyone knew that it would definitely be easier to discover treasures at the mid-grade and high-grade areas, but if they went there would not be much meaning to this competition. A confrontation and murder had occurred here, which naturally attracted the attention of many people. Some were asking their fellows as they made their way over. Ling Xiran had the intention to make Ling Han and his group even more embarrassed later, so he naturally made public the matter of their gamble. No way, he actually dares to challenge Grandmaster Nyo to stone gambling? That is Grandmaster Nyo we're talking about here. I know who this is. His name is Ling Han. Ling Han? That guy who has broken records at the realm battlefield? Sigh, he's too arrogant. This is stone gambling, which has completely nothing to do with battle prowess. I heard that this guy is extraordinarily arrogant. I really anticipate seeing him kneel down in full public. Ling Han was a famous person, so it was natural that there would be those who recognized him. Once they heard about it, everyone shook their head. To say nothing of them, even Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing were worried. They knew that Ling Han's freakish talent in cultivation was indescribable, but this was stone gambling. There were more and more spectators gathered around them. Many people were no longer picking through the raw stones. They were just standing on the sidelines to watch, filled with anticipation. A prodigy of his era, a freakish genius. If he was really to kneel and kowtow in full public. Just the thought of that happening was exciting. Niu Buchuan picked up one raw stone after another, studying them closely, but a while later, he would put them back. There was a whole day's time. He would not make his move rashly, but was taking note mentally. When it was about time, he would pick out those 10 raw stones that he considered the best of the lot. Chapter 2850, 2850 Stone Cutting. 2850 Stone Cutting. Ling Han was only touching as well, and did not choose yet. He wanted to take a look at all the raw stones in the low-grade area, and only then would he make his choice. With his ability, he only had to take a look at the raw stones that Niu Buchuan chose, and he would be able to accurately know what the latter's gains were. He would be completely able to make adjustments accordingly, and just win that slight bit more than the latter. Why did he have to do this? That was because Ling Han felt that tricking him just once would be too boring. This time, he would be humiliating them in spirit, and next time, he would deliver a severe strike at their finances. After making a full circle, Ling Han was slightly surprised. As expected, a book could not be judged by its cover, and it was the same for raw stones. Though this was the low-grade area, where chances of producing valuable objects were extremely low, he actually discovered a raw stone which actually contained a heavenly venerable seal. He did not know exactly what grade it was. Ling Han did not touch it, because once he made contact, the raw stone would explode. This would have broken the rules of stone gambling, and he would be directly considered as having lost. This raw stone was completely unnoticeable, and it was extremely unlikely that it would be taken by another, so he could just let it sit here first. It was no wonder that there were still customers frequenting this place despite it being the low-grade area. That was because everyone had the hopes of spending the least amount of money to obtain the greatest amount of profit. There were indeed people that could become wealthy overnight, but the chances of this happening were too slim. There were about over 10,000 raw stones here. Ling Han would make a note mentally with every stone he touched, and his speed was also getting faster and faster. Originally, he would have needed only 15 minutes, now, he only needed the time necessary for a few breaths. There was no other reason. Practice makes perfect. Previously, Ling Han feared that his power would be too great, and would blow up the raw stone, but now his control was getting more and more accurate. However, he had just mastered this ability. Hence, at the end of the day, he had not managed to touch all these 10,000 stones, but only completed around half of this number. It was fine. He could not touch all of them, and Niu Buchuan was even less likely to do so. He had only looked at around 1/5 of this number. Yet Niu Buchuan was not the slightest bit worried. Did Ling Han really think that he was already a Grandmaster of raw stone just by touching the raw stones? Niu Buchuan naturally thought that Ling Han was just putting on an act, a cold sneer at his lips. When Ling Han knelt down to beg for mercy later, he would harshly taunt him. Ling Xuan felt the same. He was even more familiar with Ling Han's origins than Niu Buchuan, and he was feeling very excited. An insufferably arrogant supreme prodigy of the past was actually going to lower his head and kowtow to him. Just the thought of him caused his blood flow to speed up. It's almost the end of the day. The results should be revealed soon, right? I am truly expectant. The one and only Ling Han will be kneeling to another. This is enough material for me to brag about for the rest of my life. We are both witnesses. Everyone was whispering among themselves, all hoping that Ling Han would lose. It could not be helped. Ling Han had been too impressive in the past, creating records that no one could even touch at all, which naturally garnered the envy, jealousy, and resentment of the rest. The Empress glanced menacingly at all of them. They actually dared to hope that her husband would lose? They were probably tired of living, weren't they? She was too proud, and there was only one word that she had for people like these: kill. However, Hu Niu was different. She stuck her hands at her slender waist. Just you people wait and see. Niu's Ling Han will definitely win, and you guys can just wait to be embarrassed later. Some people fired back retorts, while others put on a facade of reservedness. For noble and dignified heavenly venerates to argue with another was very improper. Hu Niu might not care about this, but they did. Ling Han, I will give you one last chance. If you admit defeat now, I will allow you to only kowtow 3 times, Niu Buchuan said, smiling slightly. It might seem that he was compromising, but he was actually still insulting Ling Han. To have a prodigy kneel was the greatest insult in itself. What difference did it make if it was kowtowing 10 times or 3 times? Ling Xuan was clearly aware of this, so he did not object, and merely nodded smilingly. Ling Han's eyes turned cold. Did they really think that he would not dare to kill a so-called Grandmaster of raw stone? However, he would squeeze him dry first. Let's begin choosing our stones, Ling Han said calmly. Stubborn. Niu Buchuan sneered. With his hand's guidance, 10 raw stones immediately fell into his grasp, and he then handed them over to a broad man next to him. This was a staff member of the raw stone lane. According to the rules of the raw stone lane, they could choose however they liked, but it definitely was not allowed to store the raw stone lanes into a spatial god tool or spatial celestial tool, because who knew if you would switch a raw stone for another? Stone gambling was also the same. The difference was that the raw stone lane feared that you would trade a poor quality stone in exchange for a good quality one, and in stone gambling, the fear was that one would trade a good quality stone for a poor quality one. Taking a high-grade raw stone, wouldn't the chances of getting treasure be greatly increased? Then what justice was there to speak of in this kind of gamble? Ling Han swept an eye over these stones, and already saw clearly through all the stones the other man had chosen. He made a mental comparison, and he now knew just how many of these raw stones would reveal treasure, and how much this treasure would be worth. He seemed slightly surprised. This Grandmaster of raw stone was really not just an empty boast. There were actually 3 among the 10 raw stones that Niu Buchuan had chosen that actually contained treasure. However, that was as far as it went. Ling Han beckoned with a hand. Xiao, xiao, xiao. 10 raw stones also flew into his hands, and he handed them over to a staff member nearby. Open them. Niu Buchuan said proudly. Together, an employee asked Ling Han. Ling Han smiled slightly. I'm fine with opening them together. After getting the agreement from both sides, the 2 employees began cutting open the raw stones at the same time. This kind of stone gambling was also very welcomed and supported by the raw stone lane because this kind of contest would bring a lot of popularity. With the boost in popularity, sales naturally would be boosted as well, especially when something valuable was gained. It would draw an illogical scramble over the raw stones. Everyone was gathered around to watch, seemingly even more nervous than the 3 people directly involved. Under a considerable number of eyes, the two employees began cutting open the raw stones. They were also stone cutters. They had already done this countless times, and were already used to being the focus of the attention of heavenly venerates and celestial kings, though they themselves were only the equivalent of ascending origin tier. It was good now that they were used to it. Their movements were proficient, and layer upon layer of stone was scraped off visibly. This stone cutting was also a field of study in itself. One could not directly slice the stone in half with a single strike. Why was this so? What if there was a supremely valuable medicine inside? It was possible that the great herb would be directly slashed in half with a single cut, and this would greatly impact its medicinal effects. Just how much of a loss would it be? It was the same for heavenly venerable seals. With a single strike, the seal would directly appear, and it was not certain who would be the one to obtain it. Naturally, this could not be sold off on the spot. Hence, one had to be extremely careful in stone cutting, though it was just worrying for nothing most of the time. As layer after layer of stone scraps was removed, the raw stone also became smaller and smaller. In the first place, it had the effect of sealing off the divine sense of heavenly venerable tier, and was not all that impressive in terms of toughness. An ascending origin tier wielding a celestial tool was completely capable of easily slicing through it. "There's something," someone suddenly exclaimed, pointing at a raw stone. That was the raw stone that Nyobuchuan had chosen. "There really is. Judging by the luster, it should be a piece of divine metal. Though this can only be considered as neither profit nor loss, even if there is something in only this one out of the 10 raw stones, this is already enough to prove that his label as a Grandmaster of raw stone is not just empty bragging." Everyone nodded. Stone gambling was stone gambling, and was completely different from battle. No matter how great your power was, you would not be able to use it. However, when it was discovered that it was divine metal inside here, the stone cutter's speed of cutting immediately increased. Because of the hardness of divine metal, he naturally had no need to worry or be careful any longer. With a few slices, he cut open the entire raw stone. As expected, a piece of divine metal the size of a fist was revealed. It was completely jade green in color. Regulations took form and entwined around it, showing 9-colored celestial light. Chapter 2851, 2851 There really is treasure. 2851 There really is treasure. There was no shortage of heavenly venerates among those gathered here, so they naturally would not take a piece of divine metal to heart. They all looked towards the other stone cutter. The raw stone in his hands was continuously becoming smaller. As layer after layer of stone was scraped off, there still was nothing unusual to be seen. A scrap stone. Finally, the raw stone was only about the size of a pellet, and the stone cutter finally sliced the stone in half. It was still only white stone material on the inside, proving that this was only a scrap stone. Hee hee. Nyobuchuan laughed, his expression very arrogant, but he did not speak. There was no need to speak, reality spoke louder than any words. Ling Han naturally would not be concerned. This was equivalent to two people playing cards, and he gathered his own hand of cards under the circumstances that he could see what his opponent's trump card was. How could he not win in this situation? Unless his opponent had heaven-defyingly good luck, and had chosen the best for all 10 raw stones. Then, even if Ling Han could cheat, there was still no way he would win. Clearly, Nyobuchuan had not gained this ability yet. Continue. Both stone cutters took the second raw stone, and continued cutting. They were both very experienced. It was clear that the first person had long since finished cutting, but he had not immediately proceeded to cut the second raw stone. Why was this so? Of course, it was for the sake of suspense, and to keep the audience hanging. "Anyone fancy a bet?" someone suddenly said. "I will be the dealer. Those who bet on Nyobuchuan winning have stakes of 10-12, and those who bet that Ling Han will win have stakes of 10-15, and anyone who bets that the both of them will tie will also have stakes of 10-15. "I will." "Me too." This instantly drew the response of a great many people. Even if the stakes for Niu Buchuan's win was only 1:1. 2, practically everyone was betting that he would win. It could not be helped. He had already established a reputation. Moreover, was it not clear that he had already produced a piece of divine metal? This was a sure win. The Empress looked towards her daughter, and Ling Shi responded with an exasperated expression. The one who was acting as dealer was Fu Tianqing. Otherwise, who else would become a dealer while clearly knowing that they would be losing money? Though Fu Tianqing did not know his master's accomplishments in stone gambling, he was familiar with Ling Han's character. If Ling Han did not have enough certainty, how could he dare to take on such a massive gamble? Since his master was filled with such confidence, what did he have to worry about? He would take bets and earn some profit. The second raw stone was soon completely cut open. Both of them produced scrap stones, and there was no treasure. This was very normal. Grandmasters of raw stone were not that amazing that they produced treasure at every turn. When it was the third pair of stones, they were still scrap stones. The fourth pair of stones was scrap stones as well. Now they were on their fifth. Hey, there is treasure again. When the stone cutter sliced down with his blade, someone immediately called out loud. Th, this is a great herb. Someone's voice was already trembling. Careful. Careful, the others warned hurriedly. They were not just simply watching. If there was any valuable treasure, they would scramble to buy it on the spot. If the owner wanted to sell, they would then be able to buy it off him at the first instance. There was no need for their warnings. The stone cutter was already beginning to be very careful. This great herb was too fragile, and could be very easily damaged. As expected of Grandmaster Niu. Here's some more treasure. And it's a great herb at that. This is a huge profit. Everyone was musing ruefully. A Grandmaster of raw stone was really not just empty boasting. Niu Buchuan smiled, looking sage-like and extremely proud. Only his heart was throbbing wildly because he could just barely determine whether there was treasure or otherwise inside a raw stone with his accomplishments, but he completely had no idea how much the value of its contents would be. Even so, his rate of accuracy was not very high. Usually, his rate of accuracy would be only 10%, and 2 out of the 5 raw stones he had chosen this time had actually revealed treasure. This was indeed lucky. He naturally would not say this. He looked proud, as if everything was under his control. On the other side, Ling Han's raw stone was still scrap, and it had turned into bits of stone very soon. Ling Xiran was even prouder now, and said to Ling Han, "You can still forfeit now, but the number of times you will have to kowtow will have to increase to 5. Ling Han glanced at him. "If you want to die, you can just be frank. I can oblige you." Ling Xiran wanted to retort, but remembering Ling Han's terrifying strength, he forcefully swallowed the words that were right at the tip of his tongue. What was there to argue about this? When Ling Han knelt and kowtowed later, wouldn't Ling Xiran then have earned back all his pride? At that time, I'll see what else you have to say. Very quickly, this great herb was completely removed from the raw stone. Seems like it is not mature enough. Judging by those great herbs that had previously been revealed, this is a great herb to boost cultivation level, but it looks bluish, so it is very young. Even so, this is still a supreme treasure. This piece of divine metal was really worth spending. Everyone was rueful. Some were even directly making bids, hoping that Niu Buchuan could sell this great herb off to them. Niu Buchuan did not speak yet when Ling Xiran spoke up. "Everyone, I am really sorry. It was I who invited Grandmaster Niu, and he is also helping me to choose raw stones. At present, I have no plans of selling this." At this, everyone made no further bids. He had paid exorbitantly to invite a Grandmaster of raw stone, so whatever was cut out of the raw stones naturally belonged to him. "Continue," Ling Han said indifferently. For the 6th pair, both were scrap stones. For the 7th pair, both were scrap. For the 8th, scrap for both. For the 9th, they were both still scrap. Only the last pair was left. At this, even Fu Tianqing was getting nervous. Master can't have gambled too big this time, and trapped himself as well, right? Everyone shook their head. Only one more raw stone was left, so what would Ling Han have to get out of it to turn the situation around? Unless it is an even higher grade great herb. A prehistoric beast would work as well. It can advance to the heavenly venerable tier in just tens of thousands of years, which is truly frightening. Why don't you say that it is a heavenly venerable seal? Wouldn't that be even more amazing? This is just speculation in any case, so mere words are harmless. No one believed that Ling Han could turn this defeat around. This was the low-grade area, and the chances of producing treasure were already very slim, what more when it came to a supremely valuable treasure. There is something again. With another few slices, everyone gasped loudly. Of course, it was Niu Buchuan's raw stone again. The grayish-white stone material revealed a hint of crimson, flickering just like flames. Divine metal. Everyone nodded. Divine metal was not much, but it undoubtedly added even more brilliance to Niu Buchuan's halo. Sigh, just forfeit, someone suggested to Ling Han. There was definitely no point to proceed any further. Ling Han naturally was unmoved. He said to the stonecutter who had stopped. What are you standing around for? Continue. The stonecutter scoffed mentally. Could it be that you are still hoping that some incredible, amazing treasure will be cut out of this raw stone, and completely reverse the situation in a single stroke? That was too naive, right? He naturally was not qualified to lecture Ling Han, and could only obediently continue to cut through the stone. Ling Han, if you admit defeat now, you only have to kowtow 9 times. Ling Xuan laughed loudly. Everything was already settled now. Grandmaster Niu, you are truly extraordinary. Someone expressed goodwill towards Niu Buchuan. Could you also help me choose a few stones in these few days? Niu Buchuan stroked his beard, showing a hint of pride in his expression. Allow me to rest a few days. After all, choosing raw stones is still very tiring. I have already worked for a day, and I need a good rest. This was putting on airs. Everyone understood this, but it couldn't be helped, because the guy was amazing. They could only continue to suck up to him. A soft exclamation rang out, and the stone cutter stopped moving the blade in his hand. What is it? Could it be that there is some treasure? Someone asked laughingly. The stone cutter had a strange expression. There really is treasure. What? Chapter 2852, 2852 Complete Reversal of Events. 2852 Complete Reversal of Events. There was treasure. Treasure was contained in one of the raw stones that Ling Han chose? This is too lucky, right? He actually guessed correctly for once. But could it compare to a great herb? It won't be much else but a piece of divine metal, right? Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then shook their head. No matter what was revealed from the raw stone at this point, it would be useless. It was too late. That's not right. Someone was staring at that raw stone, and his expression gradually became serious. Even more people were exclaiming in succession. This looks like... It's impossible, right? Heavenly Venerable Seal. They hurriedly urged that stone cutter to continue cutting. Whatever they could see of the object now was still too blurred. When these words fell, Niu Buchuan and Ling Xuan could no longer sit by, and became nervous. Though they had found 3 treasures, it was only that great herb that was really valuable. If Ling Han really found a heavenly venerable seal, then even if it was 9th grade, its value would still crush the value of their findings. Fu Tianqing sighed in relief. This master was really too evil. He had definitely done this on purpose, leaving the best and the only raw stone that would contain treasure for last, causing him to worry needlessly for so long. Couldn't you have cut this open first? That stone cutter continued cutting. This time, he was even more careful. It was extremely possible that there was a heavenly venerable seal inside this, and if he made the slightest mistake, the consequences were not something that he could bear. Even if he worked for the rest of his lifetime, his next life, and the next life after that, it would still not be enough to compensate. Cut, cut, cut. Layers of stone were scraped off, and the inside of the raw stone was revealed further and further. It really is a heavenly venerable seal. When a glimpse of primal chaos appeared, everyone was exclaiming. They could just vaguely see a blurred seal that was floating inside. That was definitely a heavenly venerable seal, they could guarantee it. However, they could not tell what grade this seal was, or if it was a seal that they had already mastered. Ling Han, how about selling this seal to me? Someone immediately said. Just name your price. It should be known that the grade of the seal is still unknown for now. I am also taking a huge risk here. Sell it to me, and I will give you a great herb. Another person made a bid. He appeared much more sincere, yet others rolled their eyes at him. He wanted to trade just a great herb for a heavenly venerable seal. Just who did he think he was? Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. I'm not selling. Even if he had already mastered this seal, he could still pass it on to the Empress, Hunyou, his son, or his daughter, right? He would never complain about having too many heavenly venerable seals. Everyone sighed, but they were not too surprised. There really were not many people that would sell off heavenly venerable seals. They all glanced sympathetically at Niu Buchuan and Ling Xuran. These two people should make good on their wager now. Niu Buchuan and Ling Xuran were both pale. Who would know that just when everything looked settled, such a great turn of events would happen? Fuck, Ling Han's luck was really too good, wasn't it? They definitely did not believe that Ling Han was versed in stone gambling. Otherwise, why hadn't he chosen a few more valuable raw stones? It could only be said that his luck was too good, and he just happened to guess correctly for the most valuable out of the lot. Ling Han smiled evenly. Now that you've lost, kowtow. Niu Buchuan and Ling Xuran exchanged looks. They naturally did not wish to kneel and kowtow in public, otherwise, how would they still have face to see other people in the future? Ling Han, I can help you in stone gambling for a year free of charge. How about it? Niu Buchuan spoke up first. He still very much valued his pride. When everyone heard this, they all couldn't help but give an O in response. Niu Buchuan's abilities in stone gambling were clear to see. If they could have his help in stone gambling for a year free of charge, that would definitely be exceedingly profitable. Ling Han definitely had no reason to refuse. What is it? Do you want to die? Ling Han asked menacingly. He did not like killing needlessly, but the man had clearly lost, yet was reneging on his wager. In that case, he shouldn't blame Ling Han for being ruthless. Pa! Niu Buchuan involuntarily knelt. This glance from Ling Han was too terrifying. It should be known that he was only a 9th heaven celestial king. How could he possibly bear the pressure imposed by a 4th tier 1? Now that Niu Buchuan had knelt, he had lost the will to resist. Though he was reluctant and unwilling, a bet was a bet. If he reneged on his bet, he would be similarly shamed. Furthermore, Ling Han had just killed people, and was a bastard that would not listen to reason at all. This kind of person was really not to be trifled with. Pa, pa, pa. He began kowtowing, 10 times in a row, not even missing once. He stood back up, his eyes spitting flames, feeling an urge to kill. Ling Han did not care at all, and looked towards Ling Xuran. It's your turn. Ling Xuran was defiant, and made a futile attempt to struggle, declaring, my father is the 4th tier heavenly venerate, Ling Dao. What Ling Dao? Kneel. Ling Han rebuked harshly. Otherwise, I will kill you right here and now. Ling Xuran very much wanted to stay stubborn, but he did not have the slightest bit of confidence to do so. Indeed, if Ling Xuran did not adhere to the rules, Ling Han would be completely within his right to kill the former. Even his father could not find anything wrong with that. At least, he could not use this as a reason to take vengeance on Ling Han. Furthermore, Ling Han was a man who was true to his word. Ling Xiran did not dare to gamble that Ling Han would not have the determination to kill. He knelt slowly, his eyes filled with rage. He swore that he would definitely ask his father for help, and have him kill Ling Han. Pa, pa, pa. Ling Xiran, too, kowtowed 10 times. Ling Han smiled calmly, and stretched out his hands, grabbing that heavenly venerable seal, which he then pressed into his mind. Very good. Though this was a 9th grade seal, it was not one that he was equipped with. Ling Xiran and Niu Buchuan were whispering to each other, and they both looked towards Ling Han after a while. Ling Han, do you dare to accept another gamble? Niu Buchuan asked. Ling Han glanced at the two of them. Sure. This time, we will go to the mid-grade area, Niu Buchuan said. He thought that he had lost because it was very hard to discover anything valuable in the low-grade area, and Ling Han had surpassed him by chance. But the mid-grade area would be different. The chance of treasure emerging there was higher, and its value would be higher as well. Niu Buchuan was going to win back what he had lost there. Okay. Ling Han did not mind. The winner can win all that the loser has obtained, Ling Xiran continued. Ling Han nodded. All right. This was not unusual. In a fight, the winner would win everything, and it was the same for a lot of places. Additionally, Ling Xiran's eyes became sharp. I want to have a life gamble with you. Life gamble? Ling Han laughed in spite of himself. Are you even worthy of that? Ling Han was a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate whose battle prowess soared directly into the 4th tier, but Ling Xiran was only a 1st-tier heavenly venerate. What right did he have to bet on his life with Ling Han? Are you afraid? Ling Xiran demanded proudly. Sure then. Ling Han nodded again. Since you no longer wish to live, then I will retrieve your dog's life on behalf of the heavens. D-dog's life? Ling Xiran almost went mad with fury. He was a noble and dignified heavenly venerate, whom even the heavens had to respect, and his life was actually called a dog's life? Master, the large black dog may bite you, Fu Tianqing warned from the sidelines. The large black dog was extremely black-hearted, and if he knew about this, he would definitely bear a grudge against Ling Han. This brat was not a good guy, either. Ling Xiran looked towards Fu Tianqing, feeling that the latter was mocking him. Let's begin then, Ling Han said. In any case, his victory was assured, and he did not mind even if it was Ling Dao's life on the line. They entered the mid-grade area. The raw stones here were far from as numerous, but the area occupied was instead even more expansive. One raw stone after another was displayed individually like antiques, and the lowest price for a single raw stone was 10 pieces of divine metal. Furthermore, there were some that were larger and looked better, and were priced as high as 100 pieces of divine metal. In fact, there were a few most valuable pieces that could not be bought with divine metal, but rather had to be bought with supremely valuable medicine or heavenly venerable seals. Chapter 2853, 2853 Betting with Life. 2853 Betting with Life. Similarly, we have one day to choose, Niu Buchuan said. This time, he didn't have much pressure. Even if he lost, it would be Ling Xiran who had to pay with his life, so Niu Buchuan was calm and bore a composed demeanor, with a kind of detachment like an outsider. All right, Ling Han said. There were about 3,000 raw stones here. With his current speed, a day's time was sufficient for him to sort through all of them. Having known that there was stone gambling in the mid-grade area, even the shopkeeper of the raw stone lane came. He was a white-haired old man. He appeared to be old and decrepit, but no one would dare to underestimate him, because this man was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate. The world has changed indeed. A dignified 4th tier was actually here as a shopkeeper? It wasn't that he had no aspirations, but rather that he was able to enjoy the benefits of his favorable position. If there was any treasure unearthed, he would get first priority in bidding. He was a fourth tier with the financial resources. In addition to some coercion, few people would dare not to give him face. He was given the title, Great Clouds, and had been a cultivator for over a dozen epochs. Everyone was watching on the side. Perhaps they might learn a thing or two from the methods of Niu Buchuan. Great Clouds Heavenly Venerate specially allowed Ling Han and Niu Buchuan to personally select their raw stones respectively and settle the final bill once everything ended. Niu Buchuan rushed out immediately. He was only at the 9th heaven. It was no problem for him to take out a few pieces of divine metal, but he was unable to take out a dozen or several dozen pieces even if he wanted to. Therefore, only under the circumstances of having the support of an extremely wealthy backer would he be able to come here to select what he needed. There was no helping it, as he hadn't been a raw stone grandmaster for very long, and so he naturally didn't have significant savings. Ling Han didn't waste time either. It couldn't be ruled out that Niu Buchuan's luck would be heaven-defying, with him picking 10 raw stones with the highest value. No matter how awesome Ling Han was, it would be impossible to overturn his defeat in that case. Both of them stopped talking and concentrated on looking for raw stones. Time passed quietly. 1 day's time was quite short indeed, and it was very soon time for the two sides to face each other with the outcome. Leng Shiran couldn't help becoming nervous. His life or death was about to be decided at this moment. Ling Han had looked through all the raw stones once, while it seemed that Niu Buchuan only looked through half of them. Although there were much fewer raw stones here, the quality of each piece was so good that the challenge of distinguishing one from the other became accordingly much more difficult. Ling Han smiled. Among the raw stones that Niu Buchuan hadn't looked through yet, at least 4 of them could be squeezed into the top 10. He didn't believe that Niu Buchuan's luck would be so good to the point of heaven-defying. Begin selection of the stones. Niu Buchuan stretched out his hand, and 10 raw stones flew towards him immediately with his grabbing motion. Ling Han made a move at the same time, and 10 raw stones similarly fell into his hands. The two respectively handed over the raw stones to the staff of the raw stone laying beside them, and cutting of the stones began immediately. The first piece was a scrap stone. Niu Buchuan couldn't help showing disappointment. He was full of confidence. With him making his move in the mid-grade area, it ought to be that each stone wouldn't have come to nothing. Unexpectedly, the first piece was a scrap stone. Fortunately, Ling Han also opened up a piece of scrap stone. Again. For the second pair, the 2 staff members were very careful. The probability of harvesting a treasure in the mid-grade area was very high, so they had to be extremely careful. "There's treasure," someone immediately shouted after a few cuts by the blade. "There's also something here." Someone pointed at Ling Han's stone. After a few more cuts, everyone's eyes lit up immediately as a great herb was actually unveiled out of the raw stone selected by Niu Buchuan. On the other hand, Ling Han merely got a piece of divine metal. The gap was so wide that there was no comparison at all. However, everyone didn't start placing their bids, because it had yet to be known who would emerge victorious in the end. The victor would obtain everything. There was no telling to whom this great herb would belong. This great herb is cyan in color, and it is 1 grade higher than the previous one. You can't even exchange it for 1,000 pieces of gold. Although there was no bid, it was still necessary to evaluate the approximate grade of this great herb. The greater the age of this peerless great herb, the better grade it was. Going by the order of 7 colors from red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple, red was the oldest and purple the youngest. However, it was said that the most valued medicine that had ever been unveiled was an orange-colored medicine, which was the supremely valuable medicine that previously allowed a 4th-tier heavenly venerate to break through to the 5th tier. Niu Buchuan was taken aback for a moment, and then burst out laughing, being extremely pleased with himself. Even if it was easier to unveil treasures in the mid-grade area, a cyan-colored great herb was still extremely rare. He was even feeling slightly regretful as he should have paid for it himself. Leng Shiran also showed a relaxed expression. This time he could be more at ease. The third piece. Niu Buchuan unveiled a scrap stone, while Ling Han once again harvested something. It seems there's some treasure, green in color. Is it divine metal? It's not clear yet. As they had no idea whether it was divine metal or something else, the staff naturally didn't dare to make too much movement, and continued to carefully cut open the stone, peeling off more layers of stone. Gasp! Suddenly, everyone gasped. This was a great herb, and moreover it was of the green grade. The order was red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and then purple, so the green-colored great herb was naturally better than the cyan-colored great herb. This point didn't need to be considered at all. Ling Han had gained the upper hand. Ling Xiaoran's expression immediately crumbled. One had to know that his life was on the line this time. Young Master Ling, don't worry, the game is far from over. Please believe me, I will definitely turn defeat into victory, Niu Buchuan said hastily. Ling Xiaoran suppressed his wildly throbbing heart and nodded. Before this, Ling Han had also made a comeback on the last raw stone and managed to reverse a losing game in one fell swoop. Why couldn't they? This was the wonder of stone gambling. No one would know the outcome of the gamble until the last moment. Continue. In cutting open the fourth pair, yes, both sides still continued to get scrap stones. Then came the fifth pair. Ling Han continued to unearth a piece of divine metal, while Niu Buchuan got another great herb, but it was of the lowest grade, purple. The two plants together couldn't compare to Ling Han's one plant. However, in the end, the gap had been drawn closer by a bit. Again. For the sixth pair, Ling Han still got a piece of divine metal, while Niu Buchuan continued his good luck, and got another great herb, but this time it was cyan-colored again. The combination of these three great herbs could just barely contend with the green-colored great herb. Ling Xiaoran calmed down again as now the two sides had basically returned to the same starting line. Ling Han remained calm. He had already grasped the entire game in his hands. The seventh pair. Ling Han opened up a piece of scrap stone, while Niu Buchuan opened up a purple-colored great herb. Although it was only purple-colored, which was the lowest grade, the combination of the four great herbs was slightly higher than the green-colored great herb in value because it could only improve one's cultivation level and shorten the duration of cultivation. Meanwhile, if one wanted to advance to the next cultivation level, it was said that only the orange-colored great herb was capable of facilitating it. This was the dividing range. One orange-colored great herb was more precious than 10 yellow-colored great herbs. Ling Xiaoran calmed down again, and even had a smile on his face. This time, he was sure to win. For the eighth pair, both sides opened up to scrap stones, and it was the same for the ninth set. Now it would all depend on their respective 10th piece. If both sides continued to open up scrap stones, then it would be obvious that Ling Xiaoran had won. Oh, Master, do you need to play the game with such suspense? Fu Tianxing complained inwardly. Although there was no evidence, he just believed that such a sequence of opening stones was within Ling Han's control. This master of his could really be very mean whenever he played around with people. Open up the 10th piece, Ling Han said lightly. The two stonecutters picked up the last raw stone, and began to cut it open. Chapter 2854, 2854 You bet, you pay, slain. 2854 You bet, you pay, slain. It's scrap. Niu Buchuan's raw stone had to be opened up first, but nothing came out of it, and it was worthless. Even after every layer of stone had been peeled off, there still was nothing there. Niu Buchuan and Ling Xiaoran were both disappointed, but they kept comforting themselves internally. The possibility of Ling Han opening up a scrap stone was also quite high, and even if it wasn't a scrap stone, it was still impossible to reverse his defeat by unearthing a piece of divine metal. The stonecutter continued slashing his blade with extreme care, and a hint of primal chaos appeared very soon within the stone, looking as if mist. No way, everyone exclaimed. Another heavenly venerable seal? Goodness, how many years had it been that no heavenly venerable seal had appeared here, and now there are actually two? This guy's luck is heaven-defying indeed, isn't it? Not necessarily, perhaps he really possesses such an ability. Everyone was amazed. It was fine to say that you were lucky once, but twice in a row? Then it wouldn't be something that could be explained by luck, but rather the person's strength. Could it be that this guy is truly a Grandmaster of raw stone? On the other side, Ling Xuan's face turned pale. He was betting his life against Ling Han. Great Cloud's heavenly venerate's eyes lit up. 2 heavenly venerable seals. Ha ha ha, then he would have reaped quite a good harvest. I have lost, Niu Buchuan said bluntly. Fact spoke louder than words. 1 heavenly venerable seal was sufficient to reverse the slight advantage that he had previously possessed. Anyway, he was merely selecting a stone on behalf of another. Although losing was embarrassing, there was no real loss for him after all. There was no need for him to kowtow again, and he didn't need to pay with his life. Of course, he would never let Ling Han go so easily. This guy was obviously also a Grandmaster of raw stone, and yet acted as a wolf in sheep's clothing, completely deceiving him. Later, he would go find his senior brother to bet against Ling Han with stones once again. He simply didn't believe that he wouldn't win the bet against him. Ling Han stretched out his hand to seize his prize, and all the medicine that Niu Buchuan had unearthed earlier fell into his hands. The winner took all. He looked at Ling Xuan. You may kill yourself now. Ling Xuan trembled all over. How long did it take him to cultivate to the position of heavenly venerate, transcending the common world, and becoming able to supersede the regulations? How could he be willing to die? I can give you a heavenly venerable seal in exchange for my life, he said. Ling Han shook his head. This isn't what we had bet on. Don't be too overbearing. Ling Xuan gritted his teeth. He was a heavenly venerate, after all. Was the life of a heavenly venerate so worthless? Hee, let me say something, the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate suddenly spoke up. Where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. Ling Han, for my sake, just treat the bet on his life as a joke. Anyway, you also have gained a lot. Ling Xuan was overjoyed, and quickly clasped his fists in respect towards the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate. Thank you, my lord. He vaguely remembered that the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate had a friendly relationship with his father, but it was too long ago, and he had only just realized it. A 4th-tier heavenly venerate had spoken up already. How could it be that Ling Han would dare to not give him face? Ling Han looked at the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate, and said indifferently, what does this matter have to do with you? The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate frowned. I am simply asking you to give me face on this matter. Are you not willing to do so? Ling Han shook his head. Firstly, I don't want to give it anyway, and secondly, you don't deserve to be given this much face. What? The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was taken aback for a moment. He'd never thought that Ling Han would reject him. Ling Han was merely a 2nd tier, while the Great Cloud's was 2 cultivation levels above him. It would be like a grandfather beating a grandson. How could Ling Han have the confidence to refuse? Fine. 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 Great Cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. I insist on interfering in this matter. I would like to see how you can commit a crime in my face. Ling Han looked at the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate. Then the person to die will be more than one. Ha! Great Cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. This was funny indeed. A 2nd-tier heavenly venerate actually dared to threaten him? He was practically seeking death. Ling Xuan, you may take your leave. I don't believe that anyone will dare to hurt you, the Great Clouds said to Ling Xuan. Ling Xuan nodded. He didn't say anything further, as only his father would be qualified to repay this favor. He just needed to accept it. Ling Han moved, and intercepted Ling Xuan. Humph. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. If you dare to make a move here, you'll see how I'm going to crush you. Why was an elite of 4th tier placed in charge here? Naturally, it was to oversee the territory. If someone was to seize the raw stone and run away with it, Could it be that someone from other raw stone lanes was needed to stop it? One naturally ought to resolve one's own affairs internally, unless it would affect others. Ling Han directly channeled the 14th seal, boosting his power by 47 times. In an instant, endless power burst forth within him. Pung! He punched out, dispersed the blow of the great cloud's heavenly venerate, and instantly caught up with Leng Xiran, without pausing in the slightest. He stretched out his right hand, and grabbed the other party's neck. Leng Xiran was shocked. How could he have imagined that even a move by an elite of the 4th tier would not be able to stop Ling Han? He wanted to dodge or block the attack, but he was like an ant in front of Ling Han. Teng, 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 the great cloud's heavenly venerate retreated 17 steps consecutively before finally regaining his footing, but Leng Xiran had already fallen into Ling Han's hands, and was being held like a dead dog. A 1st-tier heavenly venerate? It was a joke. There was the sound of sighing all around, and some people were so shocked that their mouths fell open and couldn't be closed. What was happening? A dignified 4th-tier heavenly venerate was actually pushed back by a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate. Although everyone knew that Ling Han was a freak who had previously broken records repeatedly, witnessing this unbelievable scene with their own eyes still caused everyone to go numb with shock. At this moment it was difficult to believe indeed. Is this the peerless freak? He has surpassed 2 cultivation levels. I think that even Xian Chihu and Wu Haoyang. Could they have such battle prowess when they were 2nd-tier heavenly venerates? Ling Han actually didn't even glance at the great cloud's heavenly venerate. A 4th-tier heavenly venerate could only fight him to a draw at most, and furthermore, trash like the great cloud's heavenly venerate only made him feel disdainful. He merely gazed at Leng Xiran, and said indifferently, "No one is exempt from repaying a debt owed to me." Leng Xiran felt chills all over his body. What kind of freak was Ling Han that even a 4th tier couldn't even suppress him? Leng Xiran initially wanted to intimidate Ling Han with his father's name, but even the great cloud's heavenly venerate was no match for Ling Han, so what was the use of his father's name? Spare me," he tremblingly said. After losing his trump card, and if he still didn't want to die, the only way out would be to beg for mercy. "You bet, you pay," Ling Han said lightly as a destructive force surged out of his right hand, instantly obliterating Leng Xiran's life. Immediately, a majestic force flowed into Ling Han's body, turning into nourishment for him. Here it was again. Ling Han frowned slightly. Of course, it was a good thing that his cultivation level could be increased speedily, but this ability was too weird. He still couldn't pinpoint the reason, but it made him feel uneasy from the bottom of his heart. Fine. 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 The great cloud's heavenly venerate looked at Ling Han intensely. He sensed that Ling Han's power could crush him, and it was all because the other party could channel heavenly venerable seals that were of much higher levels than him. This could only be said to be explosive power. If he couldn't obliterate this person in seconds, the rest would depend on the usual battle prowess in the end. He was confident that as long as he persevered through Ling Han's burst of power, he would be able to suppress this freak who was younger than him by who knew many years. "Brat, only one of us can live," he spat out word by word. Chapter 2855 We compete again tomorrow. 2855 We compete again tomorrow. Ling Han naturally was not afraid, and merely smiled slightly. "All right, if you want to fight, I will oblige." The great cloud's heavenly venerate looked coldly at Ling Han. "If you dare to step out of the city, I will definitely take your life." The two of them should be extremely close to equal in strength. If they went all out in battle, it was possible that the whole culmination city would be destroyed. Though the great cloud's heavenly venerate was a 4th tier, he did not dare to cause such great trouble. After all, there were too many high-level heavenly venerates here. Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. Whatever. This old geezer really did not know what was good for him, Ling Han just had to kill him then. The great cloud's heavenly venerate humphed, and left with a flourish of his sleeves. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not just because Ling Han had killed the son of his old friend in front of him, he also coveted the heavenly venerable seals that Ling Han possessed. This was just right, he could use this battle to kill Ling Han, and then extract his heavenly venerable seals from him. This old geezer was venomous. Though Ling Han could not possibly guess what was going through the mind of the great cloud's heavenly venerate entirely, he could guess a little. He sneered. Then he would just take a good roam around this area, and take away all the best stuff of the raw stone lane. Master, should we leave? Fu Tianqing asked. Ling Han glared at him. What are we leaving for? He just didn't like this brat, always exchanging looks with his precious daughter, and not acting reserved at all. He was really going to die out of fury. Father. Ling Shi walked over, looking at Ling Han with a smile. This was a gentle threat. Even if Ling Han had overwhelming strength, in front of his daughter, he could only admit defeat. He did not speak further, and continued picking raw stones here indignantly. Without a gamble, he naturally could not be too showy. He only selected those raw stones that contained treasure and bought them. He definitely would not be cutting the stones here. If that happened, it would be equivalent to helping to advertise this raw stone lane. Moreover, one should profit quietly. He could not show off here. Though he was already very showy. As Ling Han walked, he chose all those raw stones that contained great herbs and heavenly venerable seals. Actually, this kind of raw stone was extremely rare, even in the mid-grade area. He had only chosen 7 raw stones, and all of them contained great herbs. As for heavenly venerable seals? How could there be so many? He had really been too lucky to actually be able to unearth one from each area. Ling Han, do you dare to accept another gamble? Just when Ling Han had decided to pack up and leave so he could continue tomorrow, a voice suddenly rang out. After all, though Ling Han could see through the raw stones, heavenly venerable tiered divine sense should not be able to penetrate them in the first place, so it was actually quite exhausting for him as well. After looking through over 10,000 raw stones in a row, he was slightly tired. Ling Han turned around, and saw that the speaker was Niu Buchuan. Hasn't he learned enough from his last lesson? Haven't you lost enough yet? Ling Han asked smilingly. Niu Buchuan was indignant. Though he had lost twice in a row, that was all because Ling Han had been too lucky, encountering a heavenly venerable seal every time. It should be known that even if some raw stone lanes opened all the stones in their stores, it would actually be impossible to have even one heavenly venerable seal. His opponent had been too lucky, and it was no fault of his. Just look at his records. Had his chances of coming out with treasure been lower than Ling Han? Even a Grandmaster of raw stone did not have eyes that could see right into the contents of the raw stone. With his standards, it was already quite acceptable to have found so many good raw stones. This time, my senior brother will be competing with you, Niu Buchuan declared. Only now did Ling Han look towards the person that was standing next to Niu Buchuan. That looked to be a young man in his 20s. Wearing a smile on his face, he appeared very approachable and far less arrogant than Niu Buchuan. Yet you only had to take a closer look, and you would be able to tell that he was actually even more arrogant than Niu Buchuan, because even Niu Buchuan could not stand too closely to him, and had carefully retreated around 9 meters, as if he was escorting a senior. What great airs! Brother Ling, my name is Bao Fengyu, this young man said, clasping his hands in greeting. Oh. Ling Han merely nodded, indicating that he knew, and did not say anything perfunctory like, I've long since heard of your great name. This made Bao Fengyu slightly displeased. Who did not respectfully address him as Grandmaster Bao upon meeting him? This brat was indeed arrogant enough. Hiss, it really is Grandmaster Bao. This is the true disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai, and his accomplishments in the field of stone gambling are extremely astounding. It is said that he has once unearthed a primitive beast. Is this true? There were still a lot of people nearby who had not yet dispersed, and when they heard Bao Fengyu's name, they were all moved and astonished. They all approached to greet him, addressing him as Grandmaster Bao, and Bao Fengyu finally showed a hint of smile at this. This Bao Fengyu actually has some background. Master, you need to be careful, Fu Tianqing said, drawing near him. Ling Han was just about to toss a glare at him, but when he spotted the warning glance from his daughter, he could only reply, "My dear disciple, I thank you for your concern." He was almost spitting these words through clenched teeth. The daughter he had doted on and cherished for so long was about to be snatched away, and he actually had to force a smile. He really wanted to beat someone up. He could not beat this heart-stealing thief, but weren't there still two idiots here? Ling Han set his eyes on Bao Fengyu and Niu Buchuan. I just happened to be in a bad mood, and you guys have delivered yourselves right to my door. Sure then, we can compete, Ling Han said nonchalantly. The rules are the same, the winner takes all, Bao Fengyu said. However, if you lose, I want to add another condition. You will return those 10 kowtows to my junior brother. TSK, TSK, TSK. He was really quite ruthless. However, this also showed how greatly confident he was, clearly assured that he would win against Ling Han. Ling Han smiled calmly. Then I, too, will add my own condition. If I win, I will beat both of you brutally, but I will make sure I will leave one last breath of life for you guys. Bao Fengyu couldn't help but frown. He was not Niu Buchuan. Niu Buchuan had just graduated, and had not opened many raw stones, so he did not have much fame. However, Bao Fengyu was different. He had already graduated hundreds of millions of years ago, and the number of raw stones he had opened was uncountable. Furthermore, he had also personally unearthed countless treasures. To say nothing of low-level heavenly venerates, even 4th-tier and 5th-tier heavenly venerates would treat him as a respected guest, and were very polite, which caused him to slowly develop an extremely arrogant temper. It was very simple, he had been spoiled rotten by their treatment. This brat actually dared to say he would beat him up brutally? Bao Fengyu was inwardly furious. Originally, he had just been convinced by Niu Buchuan. Seeing as the two of them had been tutored under the same master, he had come here. If Ling Han gave in and took the initiative to apologize, he could not be bothered to be too forceful either. But with how Ling Han was acting, he was really outraged now. We will go into the high-grade area, Bao Fengyu said. Why were they going into the high-grade area? That was because the winner would take all. He wanted to take possession of the treasures that Ling Han unearthed free of charge. In the high-grade area, there was no need to have very high appraisal skills. One could choose some good stuff just with luck alone. He naturally wanted to take advantage of this. Ling Han waved a hand. I'm slightly tired today. We will continue tomorrow. Was this guy afraid, and would be running later? Bao Fengyu nodded slowly. Agreed. He had already made his decision. Later, he would command a few people to keep watch over Ling Han, preventing him from leaving Culmination City. With the social network he had established through these years of stone gambling, it was definitely no problem for him to get the help of several 4th-tier heavenly venerates. He had heard that even the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate could not stop Ling Han, so there was naturally no way he would have 2nd or 3rd tiers keep an eye on Ling Han. Then we will compete tomorrow. Chapter 2856, 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. This time, Ling Han was not playing around with Bao Fengyu. He really was slightly tired, and needed to rest. Of course, it was not impossible for him to forcefully proceed, but why did he have to do that? In any case, the raw stones would not be going anywhere, and the two people who were waiting for a beating had already stretched themselves out, so it was fine to keep the two of them hanging. There was no in here. When Ling Han and his group left, they just found a random spot, and then entered into the spatial celestial tool. Naturally, they would be able to get a good rest. Of course, if this was in the wild, they would have to be careful, and guard against the sudden palm strike from a heavenly venerate. If that happened, a spatial celestial tool would not be able to block it. Ling Han wanted to use a great volume of devouring metal to forge a spatial container just like the Black Tower. That really would be considered well fortified, and even a heavenly venerate would have to expend a great deal of effort to be able to open it. It was very difficult in the past. After all, there was too little devouring metal available, and Ling Han had to depend on devouring metal to be able to take that last final step. However, when this primitive dimension was discovered, it did not seem like it would be anything too hard to find another piece of devouring metal. Never mind this for now. Ling Han rested well. Using his brain too much was indeed tiring. A day later, they came out of the celestial guest residence, and returned to the raw stone lane of yesterday. Hey, why were there so many people? Though there had been many spectators yesterday, there had only been around 100 of them, but what was going on today? To say nothing of 100,000 or 80,001, there were definitely 30,000 to 40,000 people here. Even if this raw stone lane was very big, there was still a feeling of being stuffed to the brim. This was because two grandmasters of raw stone were going to compete in stone gambling, which naturally caused a great commotion. Ling Han had achieved fame in a fell swoop, defeating Niu Buchuan by unearthing two heavenly venerable seals in a row. This was definitely not due to luck. Furthermore, Bao Fengyu was even more famous. He was the respected guest of a great many high-level heavenly venerates, and it was not clear how many people wanted to befriend him. And now, two grandmasters of raw stone had made an agreement for stone gambling, and it was a weird gamble at that, which was naturally an even greater gimmick, which people flocked towards. Ling Han scratched his head. If he had known earlier, he would not have decided to compete here. Wasn't this just free publicity for this raw stone lane? Never mind. In any case, this raw stone lane did not belong to the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate, after all. Ling Han, you really dared to come, Bao Fengyu said coldly. He had endured for a whole day, and he really was displeased to the extreme now. He couldn't be bothered to put on his usual act of being approachable and friendly anymore. Ling Han was surprised. Why would I not? I am a great heavenly venerate, and you are but a mere ninth heaven. How could it be that I would be scared of you? You are disrespecting a heavenly venerate, so be careful that I don't skin you for that. Bao Fengyu's expression changed drastically. The present world situation had spoiled grandmasters of raw stone to be arrogant and willful, but everyone knew that there ultimately would come a day when raw stones would be mined completely. At that time, the so-called grandmasters of raw stone would just be trash. In the past, they had strutted around proudly in front of heavenly venerates, forcing them to smile and speak to them. Did one really think that heavenly venerates had no temper? Heavenly venerates were those that even the heavens had to respect, so how could disrespect be condoned? Once the time came, it was definite that a great number of raw stone grandmasters would be called to an accounting, and they would suffer a tragic end. But it could not be helped, being flattered in this manner by heavenly venerates. How could one not swell up with pride? For example, Bao Fengyu's natural talent in cultivation was actually average, and he had just barely made it into the celestial king tier. Originally, he should have just attained the first heaven at most, but who would have imagined that he would be extremely talented in stone gambling? This gave him a new lease on life. Hence, with the great number of treasures poured on him, he was forcefully pushed to the heights of the ninth heaven. Of course, heavenly venerable tier was not something that could be attained by forceful pushing. This really was the final destination of his boundless lifetime. But going from the first heaven to ninth heaven was already an incredibly astonishing leap. Everything was due to his ability in stone gambling, so how could he not be proud? How could his ego not get greater and greater? How could his heirs not become bigger as time passed? And now, these words from Ling Han seemed to have shattered the false words that he had used to numb himself, and clearly show that he was only in ninth heaven, while the former was a lofty heavenly venerate. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and his heart grew resentful. So what if Ling Han was a heavenly venerate? Bao Fengyu might not be able to reach heavenly venerable tier, but he could make heavenly venerates lower their heads, or even kneel down and kowtow to him. "Spare the nonsense, and begin the competition," he shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han set his eyes on this man. Had the present Grandmasters of raw stone really been spoiled rotten? Fine then, he would strike a blow to these people's pride today. They entered the high-grade area of this raw stone lane. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was already standing by here. His expression was not friendly. He had accumulated a whole day of anger, and this was a little harsh on him. Everyone is limited to taking 3 pieces. Agreed? Bao Fengyu asked Ling Han. Sure. Ling Han nodded. The raw stones in this high-grade area were truly expensive. At the very least, they would have to be bought with the blood of heavenly venerates. There were around 100 of them in total. The smallest was only the size of a fist, while the largest was more than 3 meters tall. But the similarity was that every raw stone was covered with a dense network of veiled patterns, and there was a mysterious design about them, as if they themselves were heavenly venerable seals. Of course, this was only a misconception. The high-grade area could also produce scrap stones, but, relatively speaking, the number was much smaller, and the chance of unearthing something valuable was considerably higher as well. The time limit is 1 day, Bao Fengyu continued. Okay, Ling Han agreed casually. He really didn't care. The 2 of them did not speak further, and began their selection of raw stones. I really had not imagined that Ling Han would really be so amazing to actually be competing with Grandmaster Bao. What Grandmaster Bao? There was one thing that Ling Han did not say wrong. He is a mere 9th heaven, capable of discerning a few stones, and he dares to act superior in front of a heavenly venerate? That's right. He must have been spoiled by others. As expected, Ling Han is a real troublemaker. This is truly impressive. Humph, it's about time to deliver a harsh strike to the pride of those so-called Grandmasters of raw stone so that they can recognize who they are and what their true status is. But did you guys notice something? In the past, the Grandmasters of raw stone were all celestial kings, and not one of them was a heavenly venerate. Now that you're saying it, that really is the case. It seems like there is a unique power that has prevented a heavenly venerate from becoming a Grandmaster of raw stone. Up until now, everyone looked towards Ling Han. He really was a freak. He was the first to achieve these. A heavenly venerate was also able to become a Grandmaster of raw stone. This is like a curse. Heavenly venerates can get no reaction from heavenly venerable stones. It should be the power of heaven and earth that is messing around, right? It may also be that the fundamental powers of the Genesis world are incompatible with heavenly venerable stones. Everyone began to wonder, and made their deductions. It was not clear who had guessed some part of it, but it was also possible that all of them were wrong. Setting them aside, Ling Han walked slowly, stretching out his hands to lay them on the raw stones. With the level of his proficiency now, he really just had to touch them with his hand, and the contents of the raw stone would appear completely in his mind's eye. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. The chances of treasure were really high in the high-grade area, but it was not definite that the possibility of truly valuable treasure being unearthed would be higher than the mid-grade area, or even the low-grade area. At least, he had not encountered a single heavenly venerable seal up till now. There were few raw stones here, so he would have to move faster, and grab those raw stones that he thought were excellent. However, because the gamble was going to be decided based on 3 raw stones, the number of raw stones he could grasp could not exceed 3. If there were more than 3, he would have to replace those extra ones he had picked out. Otherwise, if he took all the raw stones, what would his opponent do? After touching around 20 of them, Ling Han finally picked his first one. There was a great herb inside here. It was a green-colored great herb, and was extremely old. He picked through over a dozen more pieces, and Ling Han chose his second piece. This was another great herb, but it was green in color. Just when he was about to make a whole circle around the 100 stones, Ling Han touched a raw stone, and a hint of shock involuntarily showed in his expression. Chapter 2857, 2857 3 Raw Stones. 2857 3 Raw Stones. There was treasure in this raw stone, but it was actually an earthworm. Really, this raw stone was only the size of a fist and completely red in color. It was covered with a dense network of veins laid out in a pattern. Was this considered a primitive beast? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Would this eventually become an earthworm heavenly venerate in the future? After some thought, he still picked up this raw stone. A raw stone that contained a primitive beast was extremely rare. Even if it was not for the sake of this gamble, he was also interested to play around with it. In any case, he had already glanced through all the raw stones here, so it was definite that he could win. A day later, the two of them had chosen their 3 raw stones. I will open them myself, Bao Fengyu said. He preferred to personally open his own stones. The scene of cheers from all the people around him when precious treasures were revealed excited him greatly. Ling Han did not mind either way, and he said to the stonecutter next to him, "You help me open." "Yes, milord." The stonecutter hurriedly nodded. He was only the equivalent of ascending origin tier. In front of a heavenly venerate, he was an existence that could not be any more negligible. "Open this one first." Ling Han pointed at that raw stone that contained a blue-colored great herb. The stonecutter started, and Bao Fengyu started moving as well. Though raw stones were not very hard, it was also a task of labor for an ascending origin tier. Hence, the stonecutter was moving very slowly, while Bao Fengyu's movements were fast. Layer after layer of stone was scraped off, and a hint of blue was revealed very soon. "Is it divine metal?" someone asked. "If it was divine metal, then it would be worthless." "It's not divine metal, it's a great herb." Someone's eyes immediately focused. Bao Fengyu showed a hint of pride, and sliced a few more times. As expected, the shape of a herb could just be vaguely seen. "That really is a great herb." It has to be admitted that he does indeed have some skills. He is worthy of being called a Grandmaster. He is Yue Chengwang's senior brother, after all, the most senior disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai. Everyone was musing ruefully. Bao Fengyu might be proud, but he did have the right to be. At least he could enjoy outstanding social status and become a respected guest of heavenly venerates in this dimension before the raw stones were completely mined. Very quickly, this great herb was unearthed, and it was completely blue in color. Though it is only blue in color, it is still impressive. Everyone shook their head. Some wanted to offer bids, yet they were convinced by others not to. That was because this was stone gambling. Before this ended, who knew whom this great herb would ultimately belong to? The stonecutter was much slower, and he had only just scraped off the outermost layer of stone after quite a while. There's treasure here as well," someone called out. "That's very normal. This is the high-grade area. The chances of encountering treasure are very high, but most of the time, it is actually still divine metal." Someone beside him shook his head. "True." The person from before no longer thought this was anything strange, and decided to just wait and see. Everyone was watching them, and even if Bao Fengyu's expression was filled with pride and nonchalance, he stopped his movements, and directed his attention to the other side. And Yue Chengwang even stretched out his neck to look. He really could not afford to lose. Green? Is it green-colored divine metal? Or a green-colored great herb? Everyone could confirm that this was definitely not a heavenly venerable seal, but whether it was divine metal, a great herb, or a primitive beast, it still could not be distinguished yet. Cut, cut, cut. That stonecutter sliced carefully, and scraped off layer after layer of stone, revealing even more of the contents. "It is a great herb. It is a green-colored great herb." Heavens! Everyone exclaimed in surprise. This really was coincidental. Bao Fengyu had just unearthed a great herb, and Ling Han did as well. Furthermore, there was no need to compare the two. Green was better than blue, and this was something that everyone knew very well. In the first round, it was Ling Han's victory. Bao Fengyu's expression was slightly livid, but he was not too concerned. He had deliberately decided this sequence of stone cutting, and the objects that would be unearthed from the remaining two would be even better. He did not say anything, and continued his stone cutting. Very quickly, enough of the stone had been scraped off, revealing yet another color that was not grayish-white. "It is a green-colored great herb," someone exclaimed. Bao Fengyu was proud of himself. Did everyone think that he could not pick out any treasures? Ling Han merely smiled, and as the stonecutter slowly and carefully did his work, a color that was not grayish-white was also revealed here. Green. It can't be, right? Everyone faltered. Just now, Bao Fengyu had unearthed a blue-colored great herb, and Ling Han had immediately countered with a green-colored great herb, which was just slightly better. Now, Bao Fengyu had unearthed a green-colored great herb, yet it was possible that Ling Han had unearthed a hint of green, which meant that his odds were still slightly better. Could it be so coincidental twice? No, how could there be so many coincidences in this world? But if Ling Han had deliberately arranged the sequence like this, that would have been even more frightening. This meant that not only did Ling Han know the raw stones that he had chosen like the back of his hand, he was also very aware of his opponent's cards as well. But was that possible? These were raw stones, and even 7th-tier heavenly venerates could not possibly see through them. Everyone was staring intently, wanting nothing more than to kick that stonecutter aside. "You are too fucking slow. I'll do it." A heavenly venerate could no longer hold back. Scrambling forwards, he pushed the stonecutter aside, directly using his hand like a blade to slice through the stone. The power of heavenly venerable tier was naturally sharper than divine metal, and this was the hand of a heavenly venerate at that, so he naturally could control it at will. Very quickly, a green-colored great herb appeared. "It really is." Everyone couldn't help but wear a strange expression. This had been deliberate, this was definitely deliberate. The heavenly venerate that had opened the stone showed a hint of surprise. "This is not a great herb for improving cultivation level." "Ah." Everyone gasped again. Then what was it? Bao Fengyu and Niu Buchuan both sighed in relief. Were they about to reverse their situation now? "This is a saintly medicine for healing injuries, which is even rarer," that heavenly venerate said. What? Instantly, many people's eyes became bloodshot. Though heavenly venerates were said to be respected by even the heavens, in truth, their existence was not condoned by the heaven and earth. Hence, when a heavenly venerate suffered injuries, they had to heal their own injuries. No medicine would be effective, because heavenly venerates had surpassed regulations, so how could medicines that were still within the range of regulations be effective? But in this separated dimension, celestial medicines had wilted who knew how many years ago, yet had been mysteriously sealed in stones, absorbing the fundamental powers of the Genesis world for countless years, which allowed them to be capable of advancing the cultivation level of cultivators. And the even rarer great herbs could heal the injuries sustained by a heavenly venerate. It was true that heavenly venerates could recover injuries automatically, but what time would they have for self-recovery in battle? Thus, the value of this kind of great herb was amazing, superior to that of other green-colored great herbs. That heavenly venerate reluctantly handed this great herb to Ling Han, and couldn't help but ask, "Brother Ling, would you mind parting with a leaf?" Ling Han smiled. "Let's talk about this later." That heavenly venerate nodded. The competition had not yet ended. He was too anxious. "Senior brother, what should we do?" Niu Buchuan looked towards Bao Fengyu, so nervous that cold sweat was dripping down his forehead. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and he exclaimed, "What is the rush? There is still the last piece." He did not believe that Ling Han's third raw stone would still be able to surpass his. He definitely would be turning the tables on Ling Han. He moved, and began to cut into the last raw stone. Bao Fengyu was filled with confidence. The third raw stone would definitely reveal some extremely rare treasure. His insight would definitely not be mistaken. However, as white stone scraps flew, the stone continuously shrank in size, but not a single bit of thing was revealed. Finally, this was proven to be a scrap stone. Bao Fengyu's mouth was half gaping, his expression extremely complicated and very hilarious. Chapter 2858, 2858 Arrogant Attitude. 2858 Arrogant Attitude. Initially, Bao Fengyu had hoped that he would be able to turn the whole situation around with the last raw stone, yet reality struck him a heavy blow. It was actually a scrap stone. Originally, this would be very normal. Even a Grandmaster of raw stone could not guess accurately every time. However, he had his heart set on turning this defeat into victory, yet could not even glimpse the slightest bit of hope, so how could he not feel dejected? That heavenly venerate from before continued the stone-cutting. Actually, this was a very strong feeling of accomplishment to personally unearth a rare treasure. Even a heavenly venerate would be emotionally moved. Though he had already opened one, he did not mind opening another. He soon exclaimed in surprise because he could already see a slight part of the form inside. What is it? The people around him all asked. Strange, he murmured to himself. Everyone was extremely curious. Just what is strange? Can't you just say it directly? That heavenly venerate continued opening the stone. With how strong his power was, the layers of stone turned to dust and fluttered down with a rub of his hand, soon revealing the object that lay within. Everyone had a strange expression. It was no wonder that the heavenly venerate would feel it was strange. They, too, felt this was strange. There was actually an earthworm inside. It was completely pink, looking no different than any ordinary breed. There was actually an earthworm contained inside the raw stone? Could this also be considered a primitive beast? Everyone grimaced at this slightly. Only Ling Han could unearth something like this which would render others speechless. Ling Han set the matter aside for now, and directly grabbed the two great herbs that Bao Fengyu had unearthed. Whatever the third raw stone contained, he had already won. Peng, peng, peng. He moved quickly, giving a severe beating to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. He had never accepted being threatened. If anyone dared to provoke him, he would be beating them up. If anyone wanted to kill him, he would kill them in return. After the beating, Ling Han glanced at the great cloud's heavenly venerate. If this old geezer made a move on him, he would definitely hold nothing back. The great cloud's heavenly venerate's heart involuntarily stopped for a moment, but he immediately looked back at Ling Han. How could it be that he would be afraid? I hope you can keep it up. Don't give up, don't lose hope, and continue to challenge me to stone gambling, Ling Han said to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. These two were quite good people, spending money to present gifts to him. They should be praised. Both Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang were depressed. Hearing Ling Han's words, wasn't this just treating them like bringers of wealth? They were both indignant and furious, wanting nothing more than to swallow Ling Han alive. Ling Han, don't be too proud of yourself. We will ask our master to come, and he will definitely defeat you. Bao Fengyu shouted. I very much anticipate that, Ling Han said smilingly. Here was another person going to present gifts to him, he naturally welcomed that very much. Humph. Yue Chengwang and Bao Fengyu left angrily. They would definitely ask their master to appear and defeat Ling Han. Brother Ling. Brother Ling Han. Once the two of them left, a great many people instantly gathered around him. They were all longing for the great herbs in Ling Han's possession. If this had not been in Culmination City, where the destruction caused by a battle of heavenly venerates would be too severe, and would draw the suppression of powerful figures, they would have definitely already made their move by now. They all wanted to buy the great herbs in Ling Han's possession, especially that healing type. It could very possibly save their lives. Ling Han tossed out these words. If they wanted to buy, sure, but it could only be traded for heavenly venerable seals. He had no shortage of divine metal. Moreover, just look at the high-grade area. Since when was divine metal accepted for the purchase of raw stones here? Even raw stones could not be bought with divine metal, what more supremely valuable medicine. Ling Han continued shopping here, buying all the valuable raw stones. For this, he paid a price of 4 supremely valuable medicines, but his gains far surpassed his costs. However, there was not a single heavenly venerable seal to be seen, which Ling Han was inevitably disappointed by. However, it was already acceptable to have managed to obtain 2 heavenly venerable seals in a single raw stone lane. Ling Han took these raw stones and left. He was in no rush to unearth the great herbs. Actually, raw stones were the best material for preservation. Once they were unearthed, the essence of the medicine would inevitably begin to disperse. He closely examined that earthworm, but what was disappointing was that this earthworm had long since lost all signs of life. However, after a closer look, he discovered that this was actually not a real earthworm, but rather a great herb. This should be celestial medicine, and it was presently in the stage of taking form. Before it had completed this stage, it had encountered an unknown calamity, and had then been sealed inside this raw stone. Hence, though it had absorbed a great amount of fundamental power of the Genesis world, it was presently neither a great herb nor a beast, which was extremely strange. Ling Han put the earthworm away. Though he did not know what it could be used for now, he might have some use for it in future. He had also unearthed several great herbs, the kind that could improve cultivation level, which he handed to the Empress, Hunyou, and Ling Shi, respectively. As for Fu Tianqing, he was still tempering his foundations, and had not yet advanced to the heavenly venerable tier, so even if he consumed it now, it would only be wasted. Who would complain about having a higher cultivation level? After Ling Han had digested all these great herbs, he decided to move out again. He deliberately exited Culmination City. If anyone had any designs on him, he would settle the matter once and for all. He possessed the ability to turn the life essence of heavenly venerates into his own cultivation. Though he did not very much want to use this ability, who asked others to be so determined to deliver themselves to him? He would not waste their efforts. He arrived outside the city, and did not hide his tracks at all. It was as if he was just asking for them to rob him. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. Even the great cloud's heavenly venerate did not appear, which caused his anticipation to come to naught. He returned to Culmination City, and continued to rake in valuable raw stones. Ling Han. He had just entered a city when he saw someone calling out to him. Ling Han glanced over. This was only a 9th heaven celestial king. He couldn't help but show a hint of displeasure. What was wrong with this world? Did 9th heaven celestial kings not know that they should respect heavenly venerates? My young master would like to see you, this celestial king said. I refuse, Ling Han directly rejected. Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch. My young master, Yue Chengwang, is the only son of a 6th-tier heavenly venerate, this celestial king announced proudly, clearly threatening Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised. This guy actually dared to threaten him? He shook his head. If he wants to meet me, he should come personally. Doesn't he have any legs? Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch, that celestial king shouted loudly, a sneer on his face. Pa! Ling Han delivered a slap from the distance, and that celestial king was instantly sent flying. Ling Han stated evenly, if you continue blustering, I will take your life. That celestial king held a hand to his face, and finally did not dare to speak any further. He hurriedly turned and left. Ling Han did not take it to heart. Counter pawns with the king, and water with an earth weir. Who would he fear? After meeting with the Empress and the others, they went to another raw stone lane. It was not big, but the size of the raw stone lane did not determine whether there would be treasure or not. Ling Han discovered 2 great herbs there, which he was very pleased about. He quietly bought a few raw stones, and did not let anyone know just how great his profits were. Very quickly, he went to a small shop. Half a day later, he left, a smile on his face. Unfortunately, though he had obtained quite a few great herbs, he did not find even a single heavenly venerable seal, which left him slightly disappointed. After visiting 3 small shops in a row, Ling Han decided to take a look at a bigger raw stone lane. This time, neither the Empress nor Hu Niu wanted to follow him and waste their time. To spend the whole day looking at stones was really too boring. Hence, Ling Han entered into the raw stone lane in the company of Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing. Chapter 2859, 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. Ling Han began to profit quietly, but the luck of his first time was really too good. Now, though, he could not find a third heavenly venerable seal no matter what he tried. At most, he only found great herbs, and this was very understandable. There was naturally no shortage of celestial medicines in a dimension. As long as there was enough time, and the conditions for its growth were there, they could all become supremely valuable medicines. That stuff was still good. It could advance cultivation level, and was greatly beneficial as well. Ling Han needed a frightening amount of energy to take a single step forward. Hence, not only did he need a great number of heavenly venerable seals, he also needed as many supremely valuable medicines as possible to push his cultivation level forwards. However, he could not completely concentrate, because he was already very famous after his 3 rounds of stone gambling. Grandmaster Ling, can you help me to take a look at this raw stone? Brother Ling, won't you join me for a drink later? There would always be people trying to strike up a conversation with him. Some were very reserved, saying that they wanted to befriend him, but there were some that were extremely frank, directly asking him to help look at the raw stones. For those who were polite, Ling Han would politely refuse. He did not have that much time, and for those who had a lofty opinion of themselves, Ling Han ignored them completely. It dawned on him. That person who had demanded him to meet with the so-called young master probably had the motive of asking for his help in stone gambling. Heh, what a joke. How truly arrogant. Isn't he just good at stone gambling? Someone grumbled lowly at the sidelines. Shoo, could it be that you don't know that aside from being a grandmaster of raw stone, this guy is a supreme genius? It is said that he can match a 4th tier. Are you tired of living? Someone beside him warned quickly. Ling Han was not some other grandmaster of raw stone. He himself had battle prowess that was terrifying. Isn't that Yue Chengwang? Someone suddenly looked towards the entrance. Tisk, TSK, TSK. The young master of the Yue clan, he is an extremely overbearing guy. I heard someone had unearthed a great herb not too long ago, and he forcefully snatched it without paying. Who said that it had been without paying? Hadn't he paid a piece of divine metal? Hee. His manners are really too bad. It can't be helped. Who asked a 6th tier heavenly venerate to father him? He's probably here to play the same trick of gaining without risking anything of his again, isn't he? Who knows who's the one to catch his eye now? Everyone was whispering, but anyone who was a heavenly venerate could easily hear them. Naturally, these words were heard by that young master of the Yue clan as well. Yet Yue Chengwang showed a hint of pride. He did not fear others talking about him behind his back. This was only proof of how strong he was. Young Master Yue, that's him. Beside him, a man pointed at Ling Han. It was the celestial king that had stood in Ling Han's path at the city entrance, demanding him to meet with Yue Chengwang. To dare not give even me face, he is too brazen, isn't he? Yue Chengwang asked coldly. Since childhood, his words were like an imperial decree that no one dared to disobey. I shall see just how capable he is. He just stared at Ling Han from a distance. But what disappointed him was that Ling Han merely chose stones, but did not open them. After paying their price in divine metal, he would throw these pieces of raw stones into his spatial tool. A day later, Ling Han was satisfied. He had still raked in a good catch this time, and the only disappointment was that he still lacked a heavenly venerable seal. He planned to take a rest and then move again. Wait! Yue Chengwang had long since been waiting for him. Seeing that Ling Han was about to leave, he immediately raised an arm to block him. Ling Han looked towards him, and frowned slightly. It is said that a good dog does not block the way. Looks like you are a vicious dog. Master, don't keep talking about dogs, Fu Tianqing hurriedly warned from the side. The large black dog might become rabid. Yue Chengwang grimaced slightly. You guys are really looking down on me, aren't you? He humphed. Ling Han, hand over the raw stones that you have just chosen. I will not let you suffer losses. I will buy them from you for double the original price. This was practically robbery. Hiring a Grandmaster of raw stone would cost no small amount, but he actually wanted to buy the raw stones from him for double their cost. This was really black-hearted beyond words. Ling Han had never seen someone as shameless as this. Ling Han grinned in spite of himself. If you want raw stones, there are more than enough here. Furthermore, what reason is there for me to sell them to you? Simply because I am Yue Chengwang, Yue Chengwang declared proudly. You are putting on such great airs, aren't you? I invited you once, but that actually did not move you. Hee, you are really the first. Ling Han shook his head. I don't have the time to waste with an idiot like you. Get lost. Looks like you are really ungrateful, Yue Chengwang said coldly, yet stepped aside. He did not dare to make a move here. The consequences were something that not even he could bear. Moreover, though he was a third tier, he knew that there was no way he could match Ling Han. He would have to ask the elites in their alliance to interfere to suppress Ling Han. When Ling Han passed him by, he said, Don't think that I will let the matter go just like this. It won't be too long, and you will beg to meet me, kneeling to ask for forgiveness from me. Ling Han turned to glance at him, and threw down a few words before leaving. Idiot. What? Yue Chengwang did not even dare to believe his ears. A great heavenly venerate would actually be so rude, and actually throw insults? His expression was filled with malice. He swore that he would definitely make Ling Han regret this. Ling Han strode off. He had already foreseen this. As his strength in stone gambling was revealed, it would attract the eyes of many. Their motive was naturally wanting him to help them in stone gambling. He returned, and unearthed a few great herbs. He handed them to the Empress and the others. Everyone could advance their cultivation level together. Ling Han was sure that there was no one that could suppress him once he advanced to the 4th tier. Unless a 7th tier appeared. Ling Han, the Empress, and the others went into seclusion, digesting the benefits that they had reaped this time, but just when they came out of seclusion, they were greeted with the sight of a heavenly venerate. This man's surname was Ma, but his real name had long since gone out of use. His title was Highest North. Young lad. The Highest North heavenly venerate came straight to the point. By someone's request, I have purposely come to bring you a message. You had best beg for mercy from young Master Yu as soon as possible. If you do, you will still have a sliver of hope. Otherwise, Ling Han looked towards him. A great, dignified 4th tier, and you are actually playing the role of an errand boy for someone else. Don't you think that is demeaning to yourself? I am just fulfilling a request, young lad. If you don't give me face, take care lest I will be forceful towards you, the Highest North heavenly venerate said laughingly, as if he was joking. Ling Han also smiled. Then you should also be careful, sir. If I do make a move, I usually don't leave any survivors. The Highest North heavenly venerate's expression slightly darkened. He had not thought that not only would Ling Han ignore his advice, he would actually dare to turn around and threaten him as well. He laughed again. The young are really overtaking the old now. The youth of today really are very courageous. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not reply. Behave yourself. The Highest North heavenly venerate threw down these words and left. But he had just left and a 4 sides heavenly venerate also came, and said more or less the same words to Ling Han. This 4 sides heavenly venerate really had 4 expressions. At times, it would be a grievously weeping face, which would then be filled with anger. At times, his face would be all smiles, or overcome with hilarity. Others would really think that he had lost his mind. Ling Han dealt with him similarly, but then came two 6-tier 1 heavenly venerates, the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and Purple Flames Heavenly Venerate. They all demanded that Ling Han take the initiative to plead mercy from Yue Chengwang, and only then would he have a chance of survival. This was Yue Chengwang's effort to show his strength to Ling Han. Chapter 2860, 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han naturally ignored them. Yue Chengwang could only seek the help of 4th-tier heavenly venerates, but when it came to the 4th tiers, Ling Han indeed wasn't fearful. He went about selecting and opening up the stones with peace of mind, and then used great herbs to improve his cultivation level. In the eyes of everyone, he was both high-profile and low-key. What was considered keeping a high profile? Was it not high profile of him to defeat 2 Grandmasters of Raw Stone and kill a heavenly venerate subsequently? Moreover, every few days, he would scurry around various raw stone lanes in Culmination City, and purchase a large quantity of raw stones. But what was low-key was that Ling Han had never publicly opened up stones again, and now some people were even wondering if Ling Han had indeed won against Niu Buchuan and Bao Yufeng by virtue of his abilities, or he had just stumbled upon them by luck. Ling Han paid no heed to what other people thought as he made a fortune secretly. In this Culmination City, he stayed for more than 900 years, and the good things that he got were really amazing. However, some raw stone lanes had grown wary of him, and had put away certain raw stones that they believed to be their most valuable treasures, preventing him from having the chance to choose. Over the years, Ling Han had obtained a total of 71 heavenly venerable seals, which was extremely amazing. Although most of the heavenly venerable seals obtained were 9th-grade seals, it allowed him to obtain 3 combination seals of this level, which could increase the battle prowess by 44 times, 29 times, and 13 times, respectively. At first glance, even the improvement by 44 times didn't exceed the 14th seal, but Ling Han wasn't far from completing the whole set of 9th-grade seals. Once completed, the 111 heavenly venerable seals could all be combined in a series. At that time, it would be amazing indeed. Ling Han estimated that this would probably increase his battle prowess by more than 100 times, and could even surpass a first-grade heavenly venerable seal. On the other hand, he was furiously consuming great herbs, and his cultivation level was also improving rapidly, gradually approaching the middle stage of the 2nd tier. Only the middle stage of the 2nd tier? Had all these great herbs been given to the Empress or Hu Niu, they would at least have been able to advance to another level, stepping into either the 3rd tier or 4th tier, but when it came to Ling Han, it couldn't be helped. The number of dimensions in his body was limitless, causing him to need an excessive amount of energy for every step forward in advancing to the next level. This was the path he had chosen, and he had already foreseen this day before he started taking this route. Hence, although he was a little jealous of the advancement of the Empress and Hu Niu, he did not act too hastily. His strength was steadily rising, and the solidity of his foundation caused people to exclaim it was inconceivable. However, the peaceful days had finally been interrupted. A letter of challenge was sent to Ling Han. The challenger was Grandmaster Xuanlai, an extremely famous Grandmaster of Raw Stone. The letter of challenge stated quite politely an intention to compete with Ling Han. There was no anger, appearing calm and serene instead. However, this person was the master of Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu. He intentionally came here to issue a challenge, so how could it just be a simple spar with Ling Han? Naturally, Ling Han wasn't afraid of competing. When it came to stone gambling, he did not fear even an elite of 7th tier. Let's compete then. He responded and accepted the challenge from Grandmaster Xuanlai. When the news came out, the entire Culmination City was shaken. Grandmaster Xuanlai was one of the first Grandmasters of raw stones. He seemed to have a natural sensitivity to raw stones, and the success rate of stone gambling was astonishingly high. It was precisely due to this that it was impossible for a character like him to stone gamble in Culmination City. Wouldn't that cause everything to be chaotic? This kind of Grandmaster of raw stone would be working with various major forces, and his main task was to help these forces control the raw stones that they mined. Those truly valuable items would be retained by them. It was impossible for them to be allowed to flow into the market. Of course, they were truly gambling with raw stones, unlike Ling Han, who could directly see through the raw stones, so it was inevitable that there would be things that might have slipped through the cracks. However, Ling Han had been cutting open raw stones in such a way, and almost all the heavenly venerable seals obtained over the past 900 years were of the 9th grade, which was enough to clear some doubts. The oldest batch of Grandmasters of raw stones really did have actual caliber and genuine knowledge. Now, such a Grandmaster of raw stone was about to stone gamble with Ling Han, which naturally caused a big commotion. How many years had it been that people hadn't seen a real Grandmaster make a move? The competition venue is Saber Void Lane. That's the largest raw stone lane in Culmination City, jointly operated by 7 major forces. In the past, this was where the orange-colored great herb was unearthed. Unfortunately, the most valuable treasures aren't put up for sale at all, or I would have procured them a long time ago. You can just keep on boasting. The raw stones in the treasured area can only be purchased with a heavenly venerable seal or at least a yellow-colored great herb. With your little wealth, you still want to procure those treasures? Sigh, entry to the treasure area is strictly forbidden, so what's the use of having money? Hee, I've heard that in order to facilitate the competition between the 2 Grandmasters, Saber Void Lane may open up the treasure area for the 2 Grandmasters to select raw stones, and even the treasures of the store can also be selected. What? Then I must go take a look. I have always wanted to know what kind of good items can be obtained from those few treasures of the store. Amidst all the discussions, Ling Han came to Saber Void Lane. He stopped at the door, feeling quite rueful. That was because he had wanted to come here before, but he hadn't expected to be rejected. He also didn't know if it had been because Saber Void Lane had been afraid of his strength, and had gone so far as to especially close the shop. If he had been the only one to be kicked out, then Ling Han would definitely have lost his temper. No one would do business like this. However, the other party was too much of a ruffian. They simply closed the shop to rest, and kicked everyone out, so Ling Han couldn't lose his temper even if he felt indignant. Oh, so we are not allowed to rest, is it? Now, the door here was finally open to him. Even after the stone gambling ended today, he also wouldn't leave so he could wipe out their goods. As soon as he entered the door, he saw an apprentice waiting inside. When he saw Ling Han, he immediately bowed and saluted. Grandmaster Ling, please follow me. That was still considered polite. Ling Han nodded and followed the other party. This time, the Empress and Hunyo still didn't come. Their personalities weren't suited for such an occasion at all. In the eyes of others, opening up a stone was a very exciting thing, but for the 2 women, it was merely a senseless waiting game, extremely boring. Therefore, Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing accompanied him this time. The 3 of them followed the apprentice, and soon came to a gazebo, where they saw an old man sitting upright and 2 people standing behind him. Who else could it be but Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu? Needless to say, this old man had to be Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Ling agreed to compete with this old man. I am really flattered. Grandmaster Xuanlai was very polite, far from being as arrogant as Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu. Obviously, he wasn't dazzled by the current glory, and knew that this world belonged to the strong after all, and in front of the supreme heavenly venerates, whatever celestial king or grandmaster of raw stones were nothing but trash. Now that he had shown the right attitude, the heavenly venerates would also remember his virtues, and perhaps might even let him keep his outstanding status. This was indeed what was called being seasoned and smooth. Ling Han chuckled. I've known about Grandmaster Xuanlai's reputation for a long time. Meeting with you today, you are indeed as extraordinary as your reputation. It wasn't that he deliberately flattered the other party. The Grandmasters of raw stones who had risen at the beginning were indeed very good. He had heard of many cases. Hee, you're too kind with your words. Grandmaster Xuanlai laughed. This time, I invited Grandmaster Ling for stone gambling simply to compete in skills. There is no other meaning. Chapter 2861, 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. Huh. Ling Han was a little surprised. Did this old man really just want to compete with him in skills? Grandmaster Xuanlai turned his head, and shouted to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang behind him, quickly apologized to Grandmaster Ling now. Although the duo of Bao and Yue were not very willing, they had no choice but to bow their heads. They knelt down, and said, "We have previously offended Grandmaster Ling. We hope that Grandmaster Ling will be generous and forgive us this once." The two of them spoke in such an orderly manner that it was obvious that they had discussed it a long time ago, and it was definitely not a sudden decision made by Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han suddenly came to his senses. Just earlier, he had said that Grandmaster Xuanlai was an enlightened character. This was precisely the wisdom of the other party. Even if he were to win against Ling Han, it wouldn't matter, as he wasn't able to kill Ling Han. One day, Grandmasters of Raw Stones would retire from the stage of history, and if Ling Han was to settle accounts at that time, then who would protect them in the future? Therefore, it would be better to take this opportunity to resolve any grievances. Offend the Heavenly Venerate? Wouldn't that be suicidal? Ling Han nodded. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai saw it so clearly and gave him enough face, he would let the duo of Yue and Bao go, as long as these two refrain from any evil schemes in the future. Okay, I'll let it pass. Ling Han waved his hand. Both Bao and Yue were upset. In fact, Ling Han didn't suffer anything at all, so why were they required to bow their heads? But since their master had asked, how could they have the right to refuse? Grandmaster Xuanlai, how are we going to compete? Ling Han asked. He completely didn't pay any heed to the duo of Yue and Bao. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai was the one to issue a challenge, he had naturally thought about it long ago. Therefore, after hearing such words, he smiled, and said, "Then we will use 3 raw stones to determine the outcome." Agreed. Ling Han nodded. However, we won't be using the total value of the 3 raw stones to determine the outcome, but rather each raw stone will be counted as a single round. The victor will be the one who wins 2 out of 3 rounds. How about it? That's fine. In the first round, the selection of raw stones is limited to 2 hours, while in the second round, it is limited to 6 hours, and finally in the third round, it is limited to 1 day. Ling Han couldn't help but cast another glance at Grandmaster Xuanlai. This old man was skilled indeed. In 2 hours, the number of raw stones that Ling Han could explore was quite limited, and it was impossible to even know what was in the raw stones selected by Grandmaster Xuanlai, which made the game really suspenseful. Not only true ability was needed, but the result also depended on luck. Ling Han nodded. That's fine. He also found it boring to always win without a doubt. Does Grandmaster Ling need to take a break, or should we start immediately? Grandmaster Xuanlai asked with a smile. No need to waste time, let's start, Ling Han said casually. Agreed. Master Xuanlai invited the shopkeeper of Saber Void Lane over to act as the umpire of the competition. All around, there were countless people watching. This kind of stone gambling is quite novel. I have never seen it before. It's fair. Yes. No, don't you think that Grandmaster Xuanlai might have come here a long time ago, and perhaps had already explored all the raw stones here? If time is limited, it will be too unfavorable to Ling Han. Well, that's true also. Grandmaster Xuanlai also listened to everyone's words, and he smiled. Since this old man have put forward so many restrictions, Grandmaster Ling can also make demands on this old man. Here, divide this place into 10 areas. Grandmaster Ling can limit the area where this old man chooses the raw stones, while Grandmaster Ling can choose any area at will. As soon as these words came out, everyone around had nothing further to say. There was no absolute fairness in this world. Grandmaster Xuanlai has acted in a very transparent and righteous manner. Ling Han smiled and said, "Okay, let's do it like this." He randomly pointed to an area, which would be Grandmaster Xuanlai's area, while he chose the adjacent area. "Are you both ready?" The shopkeeper of Saber Void Lane was a one-eyed man of broad build, a fourth-tier heavenly venerate named Fiery Silk. As a dignified fourth tier, couldn't he regrow his one eye? He obviously could, but didn't. There was a deep scar on his left eye, which was obviously intentional. Perhaps it was to remind himself whom he had lost it to back then, and if this shame could not be erased, then he would not heal the wound and regain sight in his left eye. Both Ling Han and Master Xuanlai nodded. The Fiery Silk heavenly venerate threw an hourglass, which floated in the sky, and sand began dripping. For the first round, it was only 2 hours. Ling Han didn't dare to waste time, and immediately started to move around. His current stone gambling ability has been greatly improved, and he could see the inside as long as he touched the raw stone with his hand. The speed was naturally astonishing, akin to observing the passing lights on a galloping horse, making swift judgment without stopping at all. Grandmaster Xuanlai was the opposite. He would stand still and watch carefully, but once he cast a glance, he would have seen hundreds of raw stones with a single look, and he would leave after careful comparison. He was unexpectedly not much slower than Ling Han. But whether he truly saw through them, or he was just pretending, only he himself would know. Ling Han walked steadily, his face calm, but he was secretly surprised. As expected of the well-known Saber Void Lane indeed. The quality of the raw stones here was quite high. Almost 1 out of every 10 raw stones contained treasure, which was far from what the other raw stone lanes could compare to. But in fact, a large amount of treasure didn't mean that one could make money, because most of them were divine metal, and there was also a small amount of great herbs, but the quantity was extremely low, and Ling Han only saw one green-colored great herb. There wasn't anything else of higher grade than this. Was it because there were powerful characters overseeing this place that this had happened? If it was true, then such a grandmaster of raw stones ought not to be underestimated. Ling Han's footsteps were getting faster and faster. It was really difficult for him to sweep through this whole area in under 2 hours. After all, Saber Void Lane was jointly run by 6 major forces, so even though the area had been divided into 10 sections, it was still astonishingly massive. Everyone held their breath, and no one made a sound, not daring to disturb the 2 grandmasters of raw stone, or they would definitely be cast out. Yue Chengwang also came, and he sat down at one side with a haughty expression. He was also very curious about Ling Han's stone gambling ability, but it didn't matter whether Ling Han would win or Lozé would never let Ling Han go. Who was he? The son of a 6th-tier heavenly venerate, there was absolutely no one who could refuse him. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate also rushed over on purpose. There was another 4th tier beside him. He was Ling Dao, Ling Xiran's father, and kept staring at Ling Han with killing intent in his eyes. Both of them wanted to kill Ling Han, but one coveted the heavenly venerable seals in Ling Han's possession, while the other wanted to avenge the murder of his son. The sand in the hourglass was getting less and less as the 2 hours was about to pass. "Stop," the Fiery Silk heavenly venerate declared softly when all the sand had already emptied. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stopped in their tracks at the same time, and returned to their original places. "Both of you, make your choice," Fiery Silk heavenly venerate said. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai nodded at the same time, stretched out their hands, and a raw stone flew over and fell into their hands respectively. "Are you two going to cut open the stone yourselves, or let the stonecutters in this lane open up the stone for you?" the Fiery Silk heavenly venerate inquired. "This old man will do it himself," Grandmaster Xuanlai said. "I'll open it by myself too." "Understood." Fiery Silk heavenly venerate nodded. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stepped forward to personally open up their raw stones. Immediately, everyone involuntarily took a few steps forward, and began chatting excitedly. Now that the process of stone selection was over, they naturally were not afraid of disturbing these two people. Chapter 2862, 2862 A Draw. 2862 A Draw. The raw stones chosen by Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai could be said to be very different. Ling Han's piece was the size of a man, while Grandmaster Xuanlai's one was only the size of a fist, not even 1% of Ling Han's piece. If the comparison is based on size, then Ling Han will sure win, someone joked. Shut up. He is a second-tier heavenly venerate, with battle prowess that is comparable to that of a fourth tier. How can you joke about him? Someone immediately scolded him lest he brought calamity upon himself. The man froze, and didn't dare to speak any more. Everyone was looking forward to this. What kind of sparks would be produced in the fierce contest between these two people? As layers of stone scraps fall off, whether there was anything contained in the raw stone, and what it might be, would soon be revealed to the public. Gasp. As a heavenly venerate, Ling Han was naturally faster. Under his hands, the raw stone was already showing a hint of primal chaos, and a seal could be vaguely seen as churning. Heavenly venerable seal, everyone exclaimed. How awesome! Obtaining a heavenly venerable seal at the very start. This already affirmed his invincible position. The fiery silk heavenly venerate's eyes also lit up as he secretly thought that it would seem that some good things had leaked into the raw stone lane despite having been browsed by a Grandmaster of raw stone. Ling Han stopped his hand. He couldn't open it up any further, or the heavenly venerable seal would come into being. On the other side. There's also treasure here. It's also a heavenly venerable seal. The exclamation sounded again. Unexpectedly, Grandmaster Xuanlai also unveiled a heavenly venerable seal. As expected of a Grandmaster of raw stone, amazing. But there were heavenly venerable seals on both sides. How to judge this? Unless these two seals would be collected into one's mind, it would be impossible to compare which one was of a higher level. The problem was, this was a heavenly venerable seal, so even if it was given to someone, who would be willing to take it out again? Besides, if that person was to take out the more widely known 7 seals to deceive them, who would know? The first round, was it considered a draw? Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled. Although the heavenly venerable seals cannot be analyzed, this old man here has a complete heaven's ring, which can be used for scanning to match the heavenly venerable seal to the sequence so that comparison can be made. Everyone looked at each other. Was there such a thing? You can try it. Grandmaster Xuanlai took out a ring, which was engraved with seals, but it was by no means heavenly venerable seals. Grandmaster Ling, please channel a heavenly venerable seal and press this on it, he said to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, randomly channeled a 9th grade seal while holding the ring, and one of the nodes suddenly lit up. Grandmaster Xuanlai glanced at it. This is a 9th grade seal. He pointed out an area on the ring. Everything that lights up here is a 9th grade seal. Grandmaster Ling, you can try again. Ling Han once again channeled another 9th grade seal, and sure enough, it still lit up in the designated area. He was curious, and said, what if it's a 7th grade seal? Here. Grandmaster Xuanlai pointed to another area of the complete heavens ring. Ling Han channeled an 8th grade seal and the complete heavens ring lit up again, and it was indeed not in the area of the 9th grade, nor in the area designated by Grandmaster Xuanlai just earlier. This is an 8th grade seal, Grandmaster Xuanlai said with a smile. Ling Han nodded. This can indeed reflect the level of the heavenly venerable seals. Everyone was surprised. There was actually research that produced such a thing now. This is a recent invention, so it's no wonder that everyone doesn't know about it, Grandmaster Xuanlai said. He first introduced which area corresponded to the symbol of the 9th grade seal, and then pressed the raw stone in his hand on the complete heavens ring. Suddenly, the complete heavens ring lit up. A 7th grade seal, everyone said. Grandmaster Ling, you try it. Grandmaster Xuanlai handed the complete heavens ring to Ling Han. Ling Han took it, and pressed the raw stone on the complete heavens ring. The complete heavens ring also responded, and it lit up. It's also a 7th grade seal. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect that this still failed to distinguish who would be the winner. In the first round, it is a draw, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai nodded, approving such judgment. Grandmaster Xuanlai, do you still have many of such complete heaven's ring? Someone asked Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Xuanlai laughed loudly. Do you intend to use the complete heaven's ring to select the raw stones which contain heavenly venerable seals? That is impossible, as the raw stone must be cut to the extent that only a trace of stone scrap remains and the heavenly venerable seal can be seen so that the complete heaven's ring can sense it and map it accordingly. Hearing what he had said, everyone shook their head. They could already see it, so how could they cheat? However, this wasn't without its benefits. In the past, even if you saw someone else unearth a heavenly venerable seal, you could only take a gamble when rushing to procure it. Whether you might have bought a high-level or a low-level seal at a costly price would only be based on luck. But now? After mapping, one would be able to know which grade it belonged to, and even the specific sequence would be clear, so one would also be able to know whether one already owned this heavenly venerable seal. Ling Han also became very interested. He had to go get one so that he would know which seals in the sequence he was missing, and be able to connect the combination seals in a sequence. Grandmaster Ling, let's start the second round? Grandmaster Xuanlai asked. All right. Ling Han nodded. It's still the same, you limit this old man to a specific area. But since it's a longer time limit this time, how about expanding it to 3 out of the 10 areas previously divided? Grandmaster Xuanlai said with a smile. Ling Han agreed, and randomly assigned 3 areas to Grandmaster Xuanlai, while he also chose 3 areas. This time, 6 hours, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said, and he threw out another hourglass. The two immediately began to choose. The first confrontation had allowed them to understand that the other party was a stubborn opponent, and was not easy to deal with. Everyone held their breath once again. Such an even match was indeed exciting, which made them look forward to it even more. Soon, 6 hours had passed. Stop, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said. He further added, please select your own stone respectively. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai fetched a stone each, but this time the stones that they had selected were about the same size. Both of them chose to cut open the stone by themselves. As the stone scraps continued to peel off, the contents inside also reappeared. Great herb. Both sides have unearthed a great herb. Ling Han's is yellow-colored. Grandmaster Xuanlai's is also yellow-colored. Hiss, is this another tie? See whether one side has properties of healing. Below the orange grade, the value of great herb that heals injuries is higher. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect these two people would both unearth a yellow-colored great herb at the same time. After the great herbs had been fully extracted, they were handed over to the fiery silk heavenly venerate for evaluation. The fiery silk heavenly venerate observed carefully for a while, and said, they are both great herbs to improve one's cultivation level. He paused, and emphasized, invaluable. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai took a closer look at the 2 great herbs, and they both nodded, agreeing with the conclusion of the fiery silk heavenly venerate that they were indeed great medicines for improving one's cultivation level. So, this second round came to a draw again. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Who would have thought that such a process would happen? What now? For the third round, this old man wants to enter the treasure area, and then compete to see who is better, Grandmaster Xuanlai suddenly said to the fiery silk heavenly venerate. Chapter 2863 Broken Saber. 2863 Broken Saber. The fiery silk heavenly venerate hesitated. There were many raw stones considered to be of high value in the treasure area, but scrap stones might also be discovered at the same time. As a result, they had not been retained internally, but placed here as a signboard to attract customers. If these two people were to take off with high-level heavenly venerable seals or an orange-grade great herb, then Saber Void Lane would sustain a great loss. He thought about it, and decided to agree nonetheless. This was an excellent opportunity to improve the store's reputation, and since they could only choose one raw stone each, then the loss would still be limited even if the treasure was harvested by them. Treasure area. Everyone was excited. The treasure area of Saber Void Lane had always been a reserved area, and people were rarely allowed to enter it. It was just that an orange-grade great herb had been harvested a very long time ago, and additionally, a primitive beast had also been unearthed from here. It was extremely amazing. However, everyone wasn't allowed to enter the treasure area together. Only Ling Han, Grandmaster Xuanlai, and the Fiery Silk Heavenly Venerate were allowed to enter, while the others could only watch from the outside. One day's time. The Fiery Silk Heavenly Venerate threw out the third hourglass. Neither Ling Han nor Grandmaster Xuanlai wasted any time. They started immediately. As expected of Saber Void Lane, there were huge quantities of raw stones in this treasure area, arranged in a dazzling setup. Once one entered, one could feel a great aura, as if what was placed here wasn't stones, but rather time and age. Ling Han smiled. Although there was a huge quantity of raw stones here, there were only about 1,000 pieces. One day's time was enough for him to explore the area several times and choose the most valuable one among them. As he walked, he touched the stones one by one, but he was frowning slightly. In this majestic treasure area, there wasn't even a single heavenly venerable seal? Fuck. He stopped quickly, and tapped lightly on a raw stone. There was a great herb in it, but it was only yellow grade. He shook his head and moved on. After walking around a third of the area, he stopped again, and found another great herb. Moreover, it was of the orange grade. The orange grade was a leap from the yellow grade. The yellow-colored great herb could only improve one's cultivation level or heal injuries, but the orange-grade great herb could help a heavenly venerate cast away the shackles of his cultivation level and advance towards a new height of power. To put it simply, it could help a heavenly venerate sense new fundamental powers. Therefore, the orange great herb was more precious than the heavenly venerable seal. Of course, for a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, the orange great herb wouldn't have any meaning at all. Ling Han didn't take the stone. If he subsequently found out that this was the most precious raw stone in the entire area, Grandmaster Xuanlai wouldn't be able to snatch it from him anyway. Ling Han had the battle prowess of 4th tier, which was not something which a 9th heaven celestial king could contend with. After walking for a while, Ling Han stopped for the third time, and had a look of surprise on his face. It was because he discovered a saber in this particular raw stone. This was a broken saber, and yet it still made Ling Han feel a terrible and fierce aura despite being isolated within thick layers that could cut off even the divine sense of a heavenly venerate. Just a simple touch already caused him to have a headache. It was too scary. This was definitely a heavenly venerate tool, and had to have come from the hands of a high-level heavenly venerate to have such terrifying destructive power. Ling Han believed that the value of this broken saber should be higher than that of the orange-grade great herb. This saber could only be refined by at least a 6th-tier heavenly venerate, and it might even be a treasure of a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, which was more amazing. He was sure that Saber Void Lane couldn't conclude the value of this raw stone, so it had been put here, otherwise they would definitely have opened it themselves. This saber had terrifying power. Ling Han still didn't take it, and kept walking. This precious area was in the shape of a ring, so when Ling Han walked more than half of the place, he met Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled politely at him, and then passed him by. Ling Han also smiled slightly. He had a good impression of this old man. After walking for a while, Ling Han turned around and saw that Grandmaster Xuanlai had already walked in front of the raw stone with the broken saber, and he kept looking at it with a puzzled look on his face, as if he didn't know whether to choose it or not. It seemed that the old man also felt something, but he didn't have the kind of see-through ability like Ling Han, so he seemed to be conflicted. Ling Han turned his head and continued to move forward. He found a few more great herbs one after another, and even discovered a heavenly venerable seal, which made him nod in approval. The reputation of the treasure area really didn't just come out of the air, and there were indeed precious treasures here. Huh! He was suddenly taken aback and stopped in his tracks. His hand was lying on a huge raw stone, and he could hardly believe his eyes. What he saw was completely beyond his expectation. This was too unbelievable, too amazing. Ling Han took a deep breath and walked past this raw stone. His heart was beating wildly. Should he choose this stone later? If he was to choose it, what he unveiled might be earth-shattering, but if he didn't choose it, was there any possibility for him to come here in the future? He also became conflicted, and had the same feeling as Grandmaster Xuanlai. There were really many good things here, and if he could only choose one. It wasn't enough. After going a full circle, Ling Han had already made up his mind. The time has come. The fiery silk heavenly venerate spoke up. In fact, both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai had gone round once. To them, this treasure area was still a little small, and it wouldn't take a day's time to check out the whole place. Please. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai made their moves, and things turned out as Ling Han had expected. The raw stone that Grandmaster Xuanlai chose was the one with the broken saber, while Ling Han chose the huge raw stone that had shocked him. Grandmaster Xuanlai, you go first, Ling Han said. Grandmaster Xuanlai did not decline, and immediately started to cut open the raw stone. After a while, boom, a murderous aura rushed towards his face. To say nothing of a ninth heaven celestial king, even the fourth-tier heavenly venerate turned pale, and had an indescribable heart palpitation. The celestial tool in Grandmaster Xuanlai's hand immediately fell to the ground, and his entire being also sat down on the ground, paralyzed, with cold sweat flowing down from him like a stream. This. Is there any peerless monster about to be born? I am a second-tier heavenly venerate, but why do I still have a feeling of fear? Everyone exclaimed. What exactly came out of this? Let me do it. The fiery silk heavenly venerate walked up. Obviously Grandmaster Xuanlai was no longer able to cut open the stone. Even if he was allowed to stay there, his body might be torn to pieces by the murderous aura. One ought to know that its contents had not been truly unearthed yet. Everyone gathered together, and could only vaguely see something. This looks like a saber. Furthermore, it's a broken saber, and the breaking point is here. It is still covered by a layer of stone scrap, and the murderous aura is already so terrifying. Heavens, what is this? The fiery silk heavenly venerate's hands also trembled a little. So what if he was a fourth tier? The murderous aura of this broken saber was too strong indeed, and he couldn't control himself. But a fourth tier was a fourth tier, after all. He forcibly suppressed the palpitations in his heart, and gave it a slap. Now that it was known that a saber was hidden in it, with a murderous aura so terrifying, its grade obviously had to be far above a celestial tool, so there was no need to worry about it being smashed by the power of a heavenly venerate. The stone shattered, and a broken saber immediately appeared in front of everyone. The whole body of this saber was pitch black, and it looked like 1/3 of it was broken. If one was to look carefully, this saber wasn't naturally black, but it had been stained with too much blood, which made it appear black. As soon as the broken saber came out, at least 90% of the people went weak and collapsed onto the ground. Even the heavenly venerates were no exception. Only the fourth tier was able to stand upright, but his legs were shaking. Chapter 2864, 2864 7th tier. 2864 7th tier. This saber was very terrifying. To be able to advance to the position of a heavenly venerate was to be a prodigy among prodigies, standing at the pinnacle of the world. But a mere broken saber could actually render those heavenly venerates with cultivation level below the 4th tier unable to stand upright. Just what kind of concept was this? Incomparable. The fiery silk heavenly venerate sighed. According to my deductions, this should be the weapon of at least a 6th tier heavenly venerate, and having consumed the blood of countless heavenly venerates, it therefore possesses such a terrifying murderous aura. Everyone nodded. Once the saber was drawn, heavenly venerates below the cultivation level of 4th tier couldn't even stand steady. How would they be able to fight? The question was, who below the 4th tier would be able to use this saber? This wasn't a confrontation with the enemy yet, but he himself was already weak in the knees and fell to the ground. Wasn't this courting death? Unless this saber takes the initiative to recognize an owner, it won't work even if a 4th tier is to wield it, a 4th tier heavenly venerate said, but his eyes were still burning. If he could solve the shortcoming of hurting oneself, this broken saber could really be of great use. The eyes of Leng Dao and the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate eyes also lit up. The saber was unearthed by Grandmaster Xuanlai, so they could just ask the other party for it, and having a 4th tier open his mouth to request, even if it was a Grandmaster of raw stone, would he dare to refuse? Ling Han, do you want to continue the competition? The fiery silk heavenly venerate asked Ling Han. It seemed that there was no suspense anymore. A broken saber even suppressed the 4th tier heavenly venerate, which even a heavenly venerable seal could not compare with by far. Ling Han smiled faintly. Of course. It wasn't that he didn't know the horror of this broken saber. In fact, Grandmaster Xuanlai could at most guess that the thing hidden in this raw stone might be shocking, but he absolutely didn't know what it was. But Ling Han clearly knew it, but still didn't choose the raw stone. What did this mean? Ling Han began to cut into his stone carefully, as if there was a heavenly venerable seal hidden in it. Every person present shook their head. This time, let alone a heavenly venerable seal, even an orange-colored great herb would be useless as it couldn't be compared to this broken saber. But Ling Han was not only extremely slow, but he actually cut a huge raw stone into a human shape. Everyone couldn't help bearing weird expressions. Did he think that a person would really pop out of it if he was to cut it into a human shape? Ling Han's hands were trembling a little. Others didn't feel it at all, but he was under a lot of pressure. He didn't dare to make a wrong cut, otherwise he might suffer a violent backlash if he touched the thing inside, and he might even be killed from the shock wave. Therefore, he had to scan with his divine sense to clearly understand the situation inside. But when his divine sense encountered that thing, he was under tremendous pressure. Even though he possessed the battle prowess of a 4th tier, it was still quite unbearable for him. His hands became slower and slower, and layers of sweat fell from his forehead. Some people lost their patience, thinking that Ling Han was deliberately delaying because he had definitely lost. Can it be opened or not? It's pointless to delay it like this, why don't you just admit defeat? That's right, this time it's just a competition, and there's no disadvantage to you even if you lose. However, 4th tier elites such as the fiery silk heavenly venerate looked solemn. As the stone scraps became thinner and thinner, their strong divine sense could already feel an indescribable aura surging. This caused their hearts to tremble, even almost tearing them apart. What terrible thing was hidden inside? Shut up, the fiery silk heavenly venerate shouted sharply, and immediately everyone dared not speak anymore. Ling Han took a deep breath. Shwa, 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 he made 17 consecutive slashes with his blade. Immediately, the thing in that raw stone was finally revealed. Hiss. Everyone was numb with shock as an indescribably turbulent wave surged. Within this raw stone, there really was a person. This was definitely not a living person, but a corpse, without the slightest breath of life. But it was precisely such a corpse that had caused heavenly venerates to become breathless, as if they had all become mortals facing an ultimate god. It was no wonder that Ling Han had to carefully cut it even with his strength. If it had been another person, it would have been impossible to unearth this corpse. At most they would reveal a hand, a foot, or something like that. Everyone retreated to the extreme, and then looked at it carefully. This was a man who looked to be in his 30s, with a square face filled with dominance. And he was indeed wearing a black dragon robe and a black flat crown on his head, giving him the appearance of an emperor. Could it be that this is the corpse of a 7th-tier elite? Someone said in a trembling voice. It was too terrifying indeed. Even though it was just a corpse, the surrounding layers of space were shrinking and collapsing, as they couldn't bear its power at all. While the heaven and earth were getting even paler, and even though it was in the void, there were still dense thunderclouds and lightning rolling, and yet they didn't descend. Could it be that the heavens was also afraid? 7th-tier elite, even the heaven and earth would not dare to send down thunder as punishment. Impossible, someone suddenly exclaimed loudly. Although the voice was not high, it was filled with a mighty aura. Who are you? What do you know? Someone beside him couldn't help scolding the person. But more people actually revealed shocked expressions and bowed to this person. Even the 4th-tier heavenly venerates were no exception. Young Master Xuanlai. Lord Xuanlai. Friend Xuanlai. This was a magnificent young man with thick black hair and bright eyes, with a majestic aura that seemed to shake the world. Xuanlai, the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Finally someone spoke his name. Hiss. Those who didn't yet know the identity of this person were gasping for air. Who in this world was known to everyone? That would definitely not be the few 7th-tier heavenly venerates, but rather Xuanlai, Lin Yulian, and Wu Haoyang, the 3 greatest prodigies of all eternity. These 3 people were destined to become 6th tiers, and possibly even advance to the 7th tier. They were known as the greatest prodigies of all eternity, and, without a doubt, they were well deserving of such reputation. Xuanlai strode over, and everyone couldn't help but retreat, clearing the way for him. Although he was a 4th tier, his battle prowess was at least at the 5th tier, and might be even a little bit stronger. Perhaps he alone could obliterate the entire culmination city. Greetings, Lord Xuanlai. More people fell to the ground, bowing their heads to the greatest prodigy of all eternity. It was really unexpected that Xuanlai would be attracted by this stone gambling contest. Xuanlai strode forwards, and he had already come to the ancient corpse. Others dared not go within a distance of 30 meters, but he stood at a distance of 9 meters, exhibiting his terrifying strength. My father said that the 7th-tier heavenly venerates hold the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world, transcending everything else, and are immortal. He stared at the ancient corpse as he said so. Xuanlai's father, Xuanfu, was a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, the strongest of all time under heaven and earth. That's right, my father said the same thing. A rumbling voice sounded, as if there were countless real dragons roaring, while a young man also strode over. Wu Haoyang, someone whispered. Hiss, here came another greatest prodigy of all eternity. If the other, Lin Yulian, was to come, then together with Ling Han, the current 4 great prodigies would have all gathered together. The 7th tier is immortal and cannot be eradicated. He can only be suppressed and not killed. Wu Haoyang walked over, only 9 meters away from the ancient corpse, and said, if it weren't for this, hysteria would have already attacked. A 7th tier couldn't die, but currently the heavenly venerate in black dragon robes was already dead, which could only mean that this person wasn't a 7th tier heavenly venerate. Weird. Xuanlai suddenly frowned. Weird indeed. A beautiful voice sounded, and a stunning woman walked over elegantly, and similarly stood at the same place 9 meters away from the ancient corpse. Lin Yulian. Chapter 2865, 2865 Contend. 2865 Contend. Everyone was astounded. The 3 greatest prodigies of all eternity had actually appeared in Culmination City, and they had all moved for the sake of this ancient corpse, appearing at the same time. It was proof enough to show just how astonishing this ancient corpse was. You can already see what's strange about this. Xuanlai looked towards Lin Yulian. There was no one worthy of his notice. Aside from Lin Yulian, the only person that he would barely consider a rival was Wu Haoyang, and as for others? Heh, even fourth tiers were trash to him. Lin Yulian nodded. Theoretically, a seventh tier would not die or be destroyed, but the feeling this ancient corpse gives me is no different than how my father feels. That is indeed so. Wu Haoyang nodded as well. This man was definitely a seventh tier when he was alive, and even after death, he still has such tremendously terrifying pressure. I can guarantee that even if a sixth tier touches his body, their arm will be severed, at the very least. However, how could this be possible? Xian Chihu frowned. It was also he who had previously said that this definitely could not be the corpse of a seventh tier, because a seventh tier could not possibly die. This was a contradiction. However, no matter how they looked at it, this ancient corpse should indeed be a seventh tier. This was truly baffling. Moreover, Lin Yulian paused slightly, and then continued, there has never been news of a seventh tier heavenly venerate dying in all of history. If this was a seventh tier heavenly venerate, then what primitive era would he have to have existed in? This person's history may be countless times further and more extensive than we could possibly imagine, Wu Haoyang agreed. As these three people conversed, there was not one among the bystanders that had the right to interrupt. Even those fourth-tier heavenly venerates could only listen at the side. They were the three greatest prodigies of all eternity, and their battle prowess was at least at the fifth tier. This matter is too serious. We might have to ask the elders to come and take a look for themselves, Xian Chihu said. Lin Yulian nodded, and then turned to look towards Ling Han. Brother Ling, could you hand this ancient corpse over to us? Ling Han did not mind. Even he could not approach this ancient corpse. It would definitely blow up his body. He gave a gesture of invitation, and said, please go ahead. Xian Chihu looked towards Ling Han, and asked, so you are Ling Han? Ling Han merely smiled slightly. He did not know what Xian Chihu's attitude towards him was, so there was no rush to show anything either. Not bad, not bad. I think that you should spend some more effort on stone gambling, Xian Chihu said. I heard that Grandmasters of raw stone also have the ability of finding veins of ore, so would you like to come and give me a hand? He was saying this with a smile, and looked like he was joking, but if the other party wanted to take it seriously, then it seemed like he was being serious as well. Ling Han looked at Xian Chihu, also smiling, and asked, do you want to learn? I can take you as my disciple. This. He had been counterchecked. It seemed like Ling Han, too, was joking, but if Xian Chihu wanted to take him seriously, the former's words could also be taken seriously. They implied, you want to take me in as your lackey? Heh, I will directly become your master, and be your senior. Xian Chihu faltered slightly. He had not expected that Ling Han would really dare to say this, daring to fire a retort back at him, the greatest prodigy of all eternity. But if he really wanted to flip out, there did not seem like there was anyone that could be his target. It was he who had first spoken half-jokingly. How could it be that Ling Han could not respond with a joke himself then? I will remember you. Xian Chihu smiled, his eyes bright, exuding a frightening pressure. Ling Han was not the type that was willing to be bullied. He was just about to retort, but Lin Yulian stretched out a hand in front of him, stopping the words he was just about to say. This exquisite beauty said, Brother Xian, Brother Wu, we should quickly get going and pay a visit to the realm battlefield. All right. Xian Chihu nodded. He knew that Lin Yulian was deliberately trying to play mediator here. He could refuse to give face to others, but when it came to Lin Yulian, he definitely had to give her some face. Wu Haoyang glanced longer at Ling Han, and said, Ling Han, your progress is too slow. How can you be worthy of fighting me like this? I have only lost to you alone in a battle of equal cultivation level. I definitely do not permit myself to eternally bear this kind of humiliation. He was no despicable character, and was very broad-minded, relating this part of his history in full public. What? Wu Haoyang has lost to Ling Han in the past. This is too inconceivable, he is the greatest prodigy of all eternity. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Wu Haoyang actually lost. However, Wu Haoyang is presently in the 4th tier, but Ling Han is only in the 2nd tier. This is enough to show the difference. That's true. A moment of strength does not mean eternal strength. He is already no longer worthy of being considered Wu Haoyang's equal. Wu Haoyang is truly broad-minded, not caring in the slightest to speak of how he has previously lost in public. He has truly lived up to his name of being the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Everyone was conversing spiritedly, all of them praising Wu Haoyang. Ling Han was unconcerned, and said calmly, "You can suppress your cultivation level, and we can have another battle of equal cultivation level." "Maybe some other day," Wu Haoyang said smilingly. He pointed at that ancient corpse. "I don't have the time now." Ling Han nodded, and replied, "All right." In a battle of equal cultivation level, whom would he have to fear? He could thrash even a 7th-tier heavenly venerate. Even if Lin Youlian and the others had extremely astonishing strength, they still had to carefully take out a layer of stones, which they heaped on this ancient corpse. After piling layer upon layer, that terrifying pressure gradually lessened at last. But the layers of stone could not compare with actual raw stone. Hence, in the end, the 3 of them heaved the ancient corpse, which was looking like a small hill, and left. Even so, there was still astonishing pressure seeping out of the corpse shroud, causing everyone they passed to involuntarily sprawl out on the ground. Not until Lin Youlian and the others finally vanished from sight did everyone finally sigh in relief. This corpse was really too terrifying. "Grandmaster Ling, this old man admits defeat." Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled. With a toss, he threw out 2 things, and they were both wrapped in a layer of stone. Ling Han knew that this was the heavenly venerable seal and great herb that he had previously unearthed. He was slightly surprised. Previously, they had made no agreement that the winner would take all. Grandmaster Xuanlai was deliberately showing him a gesture of goodwill. Upon further thought, Grandmaster Xuanlai was actually just a celestial king, so what use would he have for this great herb or heavenly venerable seal? In any case, he would have to give them over to some heavenly venerate, so why couldn't he just pass them on to Ling Han? It should be known that Ling Han had boundless potential, and his future accomplishments were immeasurable. Ling Han nodded at Grandmaster Xuanlai and smiled, indicating that he accepted his kindness. "Please also deal with this broken saber on my behalf, Grandmaster Ling." Grandmaster Xuanlai stayed benevolent until the end, and gifted that broken saber to Ling Han as well. In any case, he couldn't even draw near to it. "Grandmaster Xuanlai, this is a supreme treasure." "Don't you think that is too rash?" the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate immediately said. "That's right, this is a rare supreme treasure, so it would be better to deal with it after much serious consideration first," Ling Dao said as well. Grandmaster Xuanlai was incredibly slick and smooth. How could he possibly make enemies of any heavenly venerate? He hurriedly smiled, and said, "Milords, your words have come a little too late. This old man has already gifted the broken saber to Grandmaster Ling. If you desire it, please seek Grandmaster Ling. It is no longer any business of this old man. Fengyu, Buchuan, we should leave." The old geezer really left, without even turning back, as if there were flames licking at his heels. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This old geezer was actually quite interesting. "Ling Han, this broken saber was unearthed at our lane. Give me some face, and we will buy it from you, all right?" the fiery silk heavenly venerate said to Ling Han. It was extremely possible that this broken saber was the precious tool of a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, and this had boundless significance. Chapter 2866, 2866 I'm not giving anyone face. 2866 I'm not giving anyone face. Ling Han, it would be better to pass it to me. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate spoke up as well. In return, I will allow you to choose any 10 raw stones in our raw stone lane as compensation. Hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but scoff secretly. So stingy. Could the value of 10 raw stones compare to the value of this broken saber? He was completely just planning to gain something without risking anything of his own. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him. He had already made a clean sweep of that raw stone lane long ago. To say nothing of 10 pieces, even 100 or 1,000 raw stones would not be able to reveal anything valuable. You can just keep on dreaming. Ling Han, you should consider carefully, Leng Dao also advised, his words filled with threat. Ling Han glanced at him. I hate you too. If either of you speak any further, I will definitely kill him. Would you believe me? The great clouds heavenly venerate and Leng Dao instinctively wanted to say no, but when they spotted the killing intent that was hidden under Ling Han's calm features, they swallowed the words that were just at the tip of their tongue. They both humphed. What meaning was there for dignified heavenly venerates to just argue verbally? When Ling Han exited the city, they could just kill and rob him. The reason why the great cloud's heavenly venerate had previously not moved was because he felt that he alone was not enough of a guarantee to kill Ling Han, so he wanted to wait for Leng Dao to arrive. Ling Han glanced at the fiery silk heavenly venerate again. The latter had been quite polite, so he smiled slightly. Apologies, I myself am also quite interested in this saber. The fiery silk heavenly venerate's gaze flickered. Since he was able to become the shopkeeper of Saber Void Lane, and oversee this place, his strength definitely surpassed the average of 4th tier. However, should he move now and suppress Ling Han? He was wary. Firstly, this was in full public, and if he made a move to snatch the item forcefully, the matter of Saber Void Lane bullying their customers would spread out. In the future, who would still come to choose raw stones here? Wouldn't they be afraid that if they unearthed anything valuable, it would be forcefully snatched from them as well? By then, with several dozen 6th tier heavenly venerates simultaneously interrogating him, how was he supposed to explain? Secondly, Ling Han was not an ordinary 2nd tier, his battle prowess was comparable to a 4th tier's. If they fought, it would definitely cause tremendous damage to Culmination City, and the fiery silk would not be able to bear the consequences for such actions either. Hence, after further consideration, he nodded slowly. In that case, friend Ling has to be careful. These words seemed both like a threat and a reminder because it was not just he alone who had designs on that broken saber. Furthermore, there were at least 2 heavenly venerable seals in Ling Han's possession as well, and he had even more great herbs. Who did not want to obtain them? Ling Han merely smiled, then turned, and left. Wait! A voice suddenly rang out, appearing very abrupt. Everyone looked over, and couldn't help but feel surprised, because the speaker was actually a celestial king. A mere celestial king actually dared to speak up in these circumstances? Had his head been kicked silly by a donkey? Yet this celestial king's expression was filled with arrogance as he declared, "My young master has said that he wants this broken saber. No one is to touch it. Otherwise, when my young master returns, whoever has taken this saber, my young master will seek them out and demand it from them." Hiss, what bold words! Who is your young master then? Even those aggressive people like Yue Chengwang felt an uncontrollable urge to beat someone up. Fuck, the celestial king was actually even more arrogant than him? Was he trying to steal his limelight here? My young master, that celestial king said slowly, extremely calm and steady, is Xian Chihu, Lord Xian. When these words fell, a dead silence fell over the area. Who was Xian Chihu? He was the greatest prodigy of all eternity, and though he had been stuck in the 4th tier for many years already, it was certain that his battle prowess had to be at the 5th tier, at least. Furthermore, his old man was a 7th tier heavenly venerate, an indestructible, immortal, terrifying existence. Even if his old man was set aside, and it was him alone, how many people in this world could afford to offend him? Thus, when Xian Chihu's name was heard, everyone fell silent, and even Yue Chengwang gave up his intentions to compete. It could not be helped, he really could not compete. That celestial king's expression was filled with pride. His master had that kind of intimidation. He had already witnessed this kind of scene a considerable number of times, and who would dare to disobey his command? Ling Han moved, and piled those layers of stone on the broken saber. Otherwise, even he would have to suffer some effects, and this could not be used to intimidate an opponent at all, because once the saber was exposed, and he was the nearest, the effects on him naturally would be the most severe. Very good, you are very proactive. When the Celestial King saw how Ling Han had taken the initiative to wrap the broken saber, he couldn't help but nod, a smile appearing on his face. The action of commanding a heavenly venerate made him feel an indescribable feeling of superiority. He did not need to become a heavenly venerate himself, but could still command a heavenly venerate. This was too fun. Very soon, Ling Han had concealed the broken saber completely, wrapping a thick layer of stone around it. Then, he picked it up. He attempted to stow it away into his spatial tool, but before he had managed to stow it in, it had already destroyed the spatial tool. He shook his head. From the look of things, the only thing he could do was hold it. Bring it over here quickly, the Celestial King harshly shouted when he saw how Ling Han was moving slowly. Ling Han glanced at him, and strode over. When everyone saw this, they all shook their head. Sigh, even someone as strong as Ling Han had to bow his head in submission. Xian Chihu was too powerful. With this kind of authority, TSK, even just his subordinate could be so domineering and overbearing. Seeing Ling Han approach, that Celestial King couldn't help but reveal a proud grin. Heavenly Venerate? Tui. Ling Han had already drawn near, and that Celestial King very naturally extended his hand, wanting to take the broken saber from him. Pa! Ling Han moved, and delivered a slap right at him. That Celestial King's eyes immediately bulged. He had never imagined that Ling Han would, and actually dared to, make a move on him, but how could he possibly be capable of sustaining the blow of a heavenly venerate? He did not even manage to counter, and he had already been blown up, turning into a fountain of blood. Ling Han very carelessly flicked his hand, as if he was swiping off some dirt that was on his hand. Quite a number of people were gaping, appearing extremely shocked. That was Xian Chihu's servant. Though his individual strength was not even worth mentioning, killing him was in fact equivalent to slapping Xian Chihu. This would become a huge problem. But there were also a number of people who were pleased. A mere Celestial King actually dared to order around a heavenly venerate. This was a reasonable kill. Ling Han turned and left. Since he had killed the Celestial King, that was it. Was there any need to take it to heart? As for Xian Chihu, sooner or later, he would battle the latter. Everyone saw him off. Some looked impressed and admiring, while some sneered, delighting in his misfortune. There were some that had soaring killing intent, and were waiting for a chance to make a move. Ling Han, Ling Shi, and Fu Tianqing went to find Hu Niu and the Empress, and they decided to return to base after reuniting with them. They had already stayed here for more than 900 years, and had already unearthed more or less all the valuable raw stones here. Furthermore, after this competition, Ling Han was probably going to become the least welcome customer of every raw stone lane here. It was already impossible for him to want to get rich secretly. Hence, there was not much meaning left in continuing to stay here. Moreover, Ling Han also wanted Zhou Heng and the others to help him take a look at this broken saber to see if they could think of some way to make it so that it would not have any effect on the user. If that was possible, the significance of the saber would be much greater. They set out, exiting Culmination City, and turned back around to head to base. But clearly, it would not be so easy for them to leave. Not long after exiting the city, they spotted a man that was sitting in the distance. There weren't any plants here, so there was nothing keeping the soil rooted. Dirt and sand fluttered in the air, seemingly like a desert. In this kind of place, there was a chair. Aside from deliberately posturing, what other significance would there be? This show-off was Yue Chengwang. Ling Han, do you think you can leave so easily without my permission? He said in a disdainful tone. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.